That's good. Good evening. Tonight is April 19th. I'm going to convene the Reading Select Board meeting. Tonight's meeting of the Select Board is being recorded live for RCTV, and you can view it on Comcast Channel 22 or Verizon Channel 23. Our videographer for tonight's meeting is Rob, and you can also check out rctv.org for more information and for replay times. So tonight we've got a healthy agenda for sure. First up, we have new members to welcome. And we will, I guess I should just do that. Welcome Jackie, and welcome back Mark. So nice to see you again.
Nice to be here. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you. In our packet tonight, we have, I believe it's the town mission statement, as well as our select board ethics policy protocol. And we do have our town clerk on the line to talk about, just to remind us of what annually we need to do to stay current and understand our responsibilities. Then we'll have a vote to reorganize the select board as per our policies. Then we have allotted time for public comment. Then we have a public hearing, the long-awaited park presentation of recommendations. And I wanted to let everybody here and at home know that we will be listening and we can take questions tonight. We will not be voting on the park recommendations. And I think that will allow more time for more public comment to come in. So we will take it up again at our soonest opportunity, which I believe is May 4th.
May 3rd.
May 3rd. Our next meeting will be May 3rd, so at that meeting, we'll actually be voting. But we will start the hearing tonight and continue it till our next meeting. We have a consent agenda with 3 items on it to extend the park committee a bit more, to address a vacancy on the Trails Committee, and to vote to approve the process for boards and committees to request funds from a select board reserve fund. After that, our town manager will present options on addressing our water and sewer rate challenges. We will have a discussion and potentially vote on electing use to use the loss of revenue election for our ARPA funds based on a recent US Treasury decision. And then at 9 o'clock, we'll talk about town manager goals. And at 9:15, we can discuss select board liaison assignments for the coming year, finish up with our current select board liaison reports and a town manager reports, and then move on to discuss future agendas. And we have one set of meeting minutes to approve from March 22nd, 2022. Okay, so with that, I guess, so would Laura, I know Laura's making a special appearance tonight. Would you like to speak first?
Yes, I think so.
Can I ask a procedural question? Can we possibly, because this is will be a discussion, move this till after we reorganize?
No, I prefer to just leave it there. Is there a good reason to move it?
Well, I'm just wondering
We
why
welcome
it's
the
not.
new members.
Right, I'm wondering why it's not after vote to reorganize.
Just, it fits. One thing that Fidel and I and any chair has to work on is making sure that we have items that we can complete before the hearing starts. When we have a hearing scheduled, we're on a pretty tight schedule, so. So we're not trying to vote on anything tonight, but discussion could be, do you have any concerns about this? Laura's got a brief conversation and an update for us, and that's really it. It's not a big agenda item. So I don't see a need to move it. It's scheduled very nicely.
Okay.
Chris, you have another question?
Yeah, I would also like to see if this could be moved, as well as public comment if that ends up being the case, because both of those are before the public hearing. So I don't see why they wouldn't be out until after the vote to reorganize.
Okay, your concern is noted, and I've explained that very time sensitive, so we've already cut into a minute of our time on this agenda item, so I'd like to redirect to the agenda as presented. Thank you. Okay, Laura.
Hi, everyone. So I'd like to just address the new board just for a real quick 5-minute thing. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just showing you a little bit of information, just like reminders for most of you. Just a real quick with one new select board member. go over the open meeting law requirements, ethics, and conflict of interest. I'm not gonna go into detail, we just have a few minutes here, but I am gonna go into where you can get the information. I believe Fidel has a packet that we created back in 2017 for all of you. Everything that I'm gonna mention here is in that packet, but the one thing I also wanted to point out too is, as you know, we're still working on transferring information over to our new website. On the old website, where it's there on the town clerk page, the board and committee guidelines, this will be moved over to the new website in the very near future. That same document that Fidel gave you is here as well electronically. Now that we're done with elections, I now have staff committed to transferring everything over to the new site. So this will be over there within the next week or so. But I just wanted you to be aware that this is kept up to date. This was done in 2021. Nothing has changed since then. All of the information that you need as far as elected board, any elected board or committee member, as far as open meeting law, conflict of interest, and the requirements as far as the ethics online training. So the ethics online training is has to be done every 2 years by any employee or appointed or elected board member. That also is on the old website. There's a link, let me get back to where I just was, which is also going to be moved over to the new website in the next week or so. Once you're elected, within 30 days you need to complete this. After that, you need to do it every December, and you'll get an email with a reminder from me stating that you need to complete the online training. So, Jackie, if you could go to the old website, and I can show you how to get to that in just a second, and go to town clerk page, and then requirements for employees. This is where you're going to continue on. You'll get the conflict of interest. You'll be able to do the online training and go through all of the requirements for the board and committee members. Everyone else should have done it in December, so everyone should be all set.
Are you gonna let us know if we're not?
You are.
Oh,
I
good,
looked.
excellent, congratulations to us. Thank you.
So what I've created here is just a slide with different links to be able to get information from the state on open meeting law and ethics training and conflict of interest. The part that you want to be concerned with, and I'll send this to all of you to your email address so that you have these links. The open meeting law. Okay.
Well, at least it's the state, not you.
I just did this like 2 minutes ago. Okay.
There we go.
This is the page that it's supposed to bring you to. I'll make sure that it's correct. Now I understand. I copied the link right from here just a few minutes ago. But the guide that you want to make sure that you're aware of is on this page. The part that I wanted to point out is the training videos. The state has training videos for both open meeting law and ethics training. The training videos themselves are really good. They're real quick videos. If you go to the one for open meeting law, they go into you have different videos so you can break it down. Something that's well worth watching, taking the time to watch. I think they're only like about 10-15 minutes a piece. Ethics has the same thing. For some reason, I'm not finding these real quick. But I'll find the links for those and send those to you as well. If you do the online training off of our website, it takes you to the videos that you need to be aware of as well. So you'll have those too. Any questions as far as requirements for open meeting law, ethics, and conflict of interest? Did I go too fast? I know I went kind of fast.
So you mentioned, just to be clear, you mentioned ethics immediately if you're newly elected and every 2 years after that. What about conflict of interest and open meeting law for appointed and elected officials, how often should that be done?
So conflict of interest is done once a year in December as well.
Okay.
So the online training and the conflict of interest is done every other year, and then every other year from there, which is basically every odd year, you just do conflict of interest. Open meeting law training, unfortunately, is not required.
Okay.
However, I very strongly recommend that you go through the videos for the open meeting law, or at least read the guidelines, which is in that packet that Fidel has for you. It's also online in the packet. All the requirements for Reading is in that same, on the page that I showed you. Right here, the board and committee guidelines. All the requirements for Reading is in here as well.
Okay.
Any other-
Guidelines.
Did I forget anything, Fidel?
Nope, I think you got them all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
You have
And,
questions for Laura?
Laura's on vacation, by the way, so
I know.
she's, yeah,
Thank you, Laura.
doing this on vacation. I appreciate it,
Mark?
Laura.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not a question, just a.
Oh, just a thank you. Thank you, Laura. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your time off. Sorry.
All right, you guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Sue, have a nice vacation.
And- Any other comments or suggestions from board members on the protocol, the town, the mission statement? The mission statement still refers to us as the Board of Selectmen, so that was the first thing I saw. That would be a small update, but maybe we could take that up later this year and just take a look at it again. I was comfortable with the ethics, we just updated that in 2021. Okay, so I think we're good. All right, okay. 7:14, wonderful. Okay, so for our select board policies, we do vote to reorganize after the election. So at this point, I'll hand the gavel over to Fidel and you can ask for nominations for the chair and then the vice chair and then the secretary, and thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor for nominations for chair. Yes, Mr. Haley.
Thanks, Fidel. I'd like to nominate Mark Doxer to be chair.
Second.
Go ahead, keep going, sorry.
Thank you. Discussion. I'm thinking that Mark is the one that's gonna be able to bridge the gap this year, working with Fidel, to hopefully bring the town closer together. Things have been divided for quite a long time, whether or not people want to accept that or not. I mean, it is what it is, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that Mark, with Fidel's help and perhaps me as his vice chair, can work together and see about doing what's in the best interest of Reading and moving things forward. So I nominate Mark Doxer.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Do we do each one, or you wanna do all that now? Oh, for chair.
For chair, yes, correct. This is
sorry.
nominations for chair. Sorry, chair only. Any other nominations for chair?
We're good?
Going once?
Okay.
Some chairs, okay. So we'll have a vote for chair.
Or, hold on, any, or just, let's ask for any board members have any other
Sure.
discussions.
Discussions, sure. Sorry about that.
Nope, I have none, I seconded it, I'm fully supportive of that motion.
Discussion about the vote?
I already had it, Fidel.
So we'll take a vote on the Mark Doxer for chair. Mr. Machi?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Haley?
Yes.
Mr. Doxer?
Yes.
Ms. Herrick?
Yes.
And Ms. McCarthy?
Yes.
All right.
Great.
Motion passes by 5. And you the gavel. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks, much appreciated. I might wanna make a quick comment, but why don't we go through the whole thing first? We'll make the nominations for the other members first. So let me open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Kelly.
I'd like to nominate Chris Haley.
Second.
Other nominations?
None, go ahead.
Well, you don't get
No, go ahead.
to say anymore?
No, go ahead.
I will nominate Karen Herrick as vice chair.
Thank you. So could
We
we have
need
a
it.
second?
We need a second.
Second. Thank you, Jackie.
Other nominations? None appearing. So we go alphabetical order. So first we'll vote all those in favor of Chris Haley as
Oh.
vice.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to have the two nominees talk about, ask them if they want to say
That's a
anything
good idea.
first?
Sure,
Okay, I
I
think we
think
did
that's
it
a good
last
idea.
year, that's the only
Yeah,
one I bring,
I think
the
it's a
only
good
reason I
idea.
bring it up.
So please, so we'll ask each of the nominees to make a comment as to why they would like to serve as vice chair. We'll start with Chris.
Thanks, Mark. I kind of already outlined it in the beginning there. I just think that the way that the town unfortunately has been the last couple years, I just think that it needs a new direction. And obviously, we needed a new voice for Reading. Jackie is that new voice. Fidel is also here. I would just like to work with you, Mark, and just try to learn from you with the amount of years that you've obviously served as, longer than I have. So I'd just like to learn from what you have and then just show that you and I can work together for the betterment of Reading, which is the entire reason that we're here in the first place. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Karen?
Great, thanks. Thanks, Mark. So I've enjoyed being chair, enjoyed working with Fidel this last year, or the last 3 or 4 months through the process. Coupled with significant time on the finance committee, 5 years, again, being reelected to town meeting, I think it's officially 21 or 22 years. And I certainly appreciated Mark's strength as secretary and being past chair this entire year. So having then sat in the chair's seat, I understand that this is a position where it's best for Reading if we have someone who is already experienced. So I would be happy to support Mark, and I know sometimes when you're chair, at the last minute, you need to call on your vice chair to step in for you, and I am absolutely willing to do that. And I just want to thank you again for all the support you provided last year.
Thank you. Any comments from other board members? Questions? Not appearing. Okay, so we will move on to the vote. We'll go in alphabetical order. We have 2 H's, but Haley is going to come before Herrick here. Oh, Susie, yes, please.
I have
Karen.
a question. Karen Janowski, I'm wondering, this seems to be a little bit different from precedent, in terms of, there's always something new, but typically in the second year of someone's term of office, they are either chair or vice chair. That has been traditional, because we can't have a person who's in the 3rd year of their term be the chair, because then they're running for election. So I'm just curious why we would have Karen Herrick, who is just chair, now be the vice chair as opposed to Chris Haley. I'm just wondering why the difference now. And I agree with Chris's comment about this has been a very divisive period in our town government, and it does seem like having somebody like Chris be the vice chair, that would be a signal to the community that we're working together.
Just to respond to your question, I don't think it actually has been a precedent that way. We have current members who have not served as chair or vice chair in their 2nd year.
But you did,
I served as chair in my 2nd year.
right, exactly. That's what I'm talking about, either chair or vice chair.
Right, but that has not been our precedent. It's happened sometimes, but it has not been the precedent.
I understand, it just seems surprising that it would go in a different direction.
So again, it's not going in a different direction, just to be clear. The nominations are open for vice chair. Anybody can be the vice chair, whether or not it's their 2nd year or not. So I don't want to give the impression that it is a different direction. It's a possibility for anyone to be in the vice chair role, including potentially a new member, although I'm not sure that would be our preference here. So let's come back. So we're voting on the nomination of Chris Haley to be the vice chair of the board. And I see, it sounds like we're going around the circle to kind of see kind of where we are. So let me start with Jackie.
What, can I ask a question?
Yes,
or-
please.
Yeah, Fidel, or I don't know if Ivry is on the line, can you walk me through what the charter responsibilities of the vice chair are? Is it in the charter?
Good question. I think the select board is, but I don't know if it's true.
Sure, that one, right.
I believe it's,
No.
like step in.
No. Not individually, as a body, it is, but not individually, it's on page 14. So not individually.
Okay,
So I think traditionally the role of the vice chair has been to number one, fill in when the chair is not able to fill his or her duties. And then, not sure what else is, that's, I think, basically how it's set up. So it's kind of the duties of the chair, and then the vice chair fills in when the chair is not there. I think in practice, in many occasions, what's happened also is that because we're a group of 5, we're allowed to have 2 people have discussions only. And in many cases, the chair and vice chair will have discussions together. Not exclusively, but in many occasions.
I will say the other component is that the vice chair has weighed in a lot this past year, helped putting together the agendas, but I think that's entirely up to the chair.
I'm sorry, well, I was just gonna say, I would just love to be collaborating with you on this, Mark, and I would indeed be able to fill in if need be, but I don't believe you missed a single meeting last year, so I don't plan on doing that. Unless you do.
I think up front. Are there other questions or comments before we?
no, I think we were in the
Okay.
vote.
Yeah, no, sorry, we're kind of putting pressure on everybody very quickly, so. I guess I have to ask for your vote.
Okay, I vote for Karen Herrick.
So that's gonna be registered as a no
Oh, okay.
for Chris.
Okay.
Karen,
No for Chris.
Carlo,
Yes, yes.
and Chris.
Yes.
And I'm gonna vote no.
But I'd like to
So
thank
we're-
you for standing up, stepping up and being willing to do it.
So we're 3-2, 2-3. So now I'll accept votes for Karen Herrick as vice chair. So
Yes.
go around. Yes, Karen,
Yes.
Carlo,
No.
Chris,
No.
and Mark, yes. So we're 3-2, Karen is vice chair.
Thank you.
Now, I would, if I could.
Mark,
Yes, hello?
I have someone on Zoom that's raising their hand.
So we will come to public comment in just a moment, so if they could just hang on one moment, that would be great. So first of all, to the board, thank you for appointing me as the chair. I appreciate that very much. I take the responsibility very seriously. As I decided whether or not I wanted to run for re-election, this town means a lot to me, and how it runs means a lot to me also. Chris made an excellent point. We are a town divided at the moment. We're a nation divided, we're also a town divided. The election showed that as well. I think we found that many people voted based on that distinction. That's something that would be great to change, and it's important for us as a board, as the leaders of the community, to be able to do that. And that I see that as our responsibility in terms of how we take it forward. I got an email earlier today, or a text actually earlier today from a colleague also, just asking me if I'd stand up for my campaign promise in terms of how I would work together with the community. And I responded to that person that I absolutely would, as I said I would, fairly, and listening to all parties, and making sure that we move forward that way. And I will do that. I will make sure that we do that, and I will work with my vice chair to make sure that we do that as well. I don't wanna take up too much time today. I would rather kind of move forward, but again, I appreciate the folks kind of deciding to elect me as chair, and we'll work together to make this happen. So now we are at a little bit behind our timing, but I want to move on to secretary. Thank you. So we need to go through, the role of the secretary is to be responding to the community, and for any emails that come into the system, to read out public hearings, and also there's some signing responsibility that goes with it as well. So I will accept nominations for secretary.
I nominate Chris Haley.
I will second.
I'd like to nominate Jackie McCarthy.
Second.
Thanks.
Any other nominations? None appearing, we'll close nominations. We'll move to voting. Again, we go in alphabetical order, so this would be voting for Chris Haley as the secretary of the board.
Yes.
Jackie? Karen? So Jackie's yes, Karen is.
Okay, so let me just ask, Chris, is this something you're willing to do? It is bit of work.
I'm always willing to put the work in. I was kind of hoping, obviously, to be vice chair for the reasons that I outlined before that. It's rather unfortunate, the avenue that we're gonna be going down again. And if you would like me to be secretary, I'm not going to turn it down.
How do you vote?
Okay, I would like to second Jackie's vote for Chris Haley as secretary. Thank you.
Carlo?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark, yes. We are 5-0.
Great.
It's your first opportunity tonight when we get to the public hearing. Okay, now we're moving to public comment. Are there people in the room that would like to speak? Mr. Brown?
Good evening. My name is William Brown. I'm a resident of Reading since 1932 and currently of 28 Martin Road. When I joined the Air Force on December 20th, 1950, I took an oath to defend this country from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Thankfully, I did not have to defend myself against foreign enemies. I'm here tonight to defend myself from domestic enemies by a vile and vicious letter to the editor signed by over 30 residents, including elected officials past and present, that state that I was a racist and a bigot based on a statement made at town meeting that was taken out of content, and because I did not vote yes on a proclamation of George condemning the murder of George Floyd. I stated at town meeting that myself and other airmen, both white and of color, walked out of a diner when we were told they did not serve, and I won't use that word. I repeat, we walked out. I did not vote for the proclamation because under the Constitution of the United States, a person is presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law, and not by a proclamation of the town of Reading. On the morning of April 6th, I felt somewhat vindicated when I read that the results of Precinct 8 and found out not only I was re-elected, but I was number one with 225 votes, 500 more than Ms. Herrick and several other members signed the letter, were not returned or not elected to town meeting, including Mr. Herrick and Mr. Brandt, a member of the school committee. Over the last 60 years or so, I have given countless hours to this community. But, not to have my name dragged through the mud by those that signed the letter for their political correct agenda. Thank you. And I'm gonna leave you each with a little piece of packet that you might wanna read.
Thank you.
A personal copy of the
Awesome.
Constitution.
Thank you very much.
You might find it enjoyable reading.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Bill.
Others in the room that would like to speak this evening for public comment? All right, let's move to Zoom. Caitlin, who do we have on Zoom that would like to speak?
It's Nancy.
I'm sorry, Nancy.
This is Nancy D.
Okay, Nancy, could you please tell us your name and address?
Just don't get it.
We're not hearing you. Nancy, can you hear us, and can you unmute yourself, please?
You might have stepped away.
Sorry, no, sorry, it took me a while. Nancy Dr. Pearl.
It's a
I'm
doctor,
so sorry. This is why I wasn't voting the chair of precinct 1 because I'm not computer literate. Nancy Doctor, Pearl Street, congratulations to all of you. I raised my hand actually because someone in the audience had raised an issue regarding the voting of the chair and the vice chair. I just wanted to clarify the issue in the past has never been about the vice chair. It's always been about the chair running for chair in their last year. It's never been an issue for the vice chair. I just wanted to make that part of the public comment. That's all. And congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Do we have other members of the public that would like to speak from Zoom?
I do not see any more hands.
All right, one more time around the room in here. Anyone else that would like to speak on public comment? Very good. Let's move on. We are past 7:30, so we can move to a public hearing. Mr. Secretary, can I ask you to read the public hearing notice?
Thanks, Mark. To the inhabitants of the town of Reading, please take notice that the Select Board of the town of Reading will hold a public hearing on April 19th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Massachusetts, and remotely on Zoom to make modifications to the downtown parking system. A copy of the proposed documents regarding this topic will be available in the Select Board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. All interested parties are invited to attend the hearing or may submit their comments in writing or by email prior to 6 p.m. on April 19, 2022 to townmanager@ci.reading.ma.us by order of Fidel Matiz, Town Manager.
Thank you. So I assume we'll be starting with a Park Committee presentation? Is that our plan? Okay, so first of all, Park Committee, do you have a quorum? And if so, can you call yourselves to order?
Do it, Bernie. Actually, there's some people on Zoom, so we do have one.
I saw Bernie earlier.
I thought I saw him outside too.
Yeah, he was.
Looks like a quorum to me.
Call Park to order, so if you would be so good.
I'd be delighted to call the Parking Analysis and Recommendations Committee meeting together, or to order.
Great.
My name's Bernie Moore.
Ready?
Welcome, nice to see you again, all of you, thank you again for coming. We're working so hard on this committee.
So let's have a quick discussion about how we want to progress. Do you want to make your presentation first? I noted that inside the presentation, it looks like there are a couple of spots for comments. We could do that. We'll make sure that we allow time for public comment, either during the presentation, during those moments, or after, but I thought we'd do the presentation first.
I would agree. In our normal practice at our meetings has been to take public comments first, but I think you're right. It would be better if we just went through the entire presentation and then took questions at the designated spaces.
Good, please proceed.
We have
Yes, Bernie.
Sorry, and we just ask that if you're presenting, just step up and speak closer to the mics, not from the crowd.
Yeah, I think our order among us is that Chris is going to make some
That's fine.
introductory
Sorry.
remarks. I'm going to go second, and then we're going to follow.
Great.
Alrighty, so the first introductions are the park members. We have Bernie Horn Jr., who's the chair, Elizabeth Whitelam, the vice chair in the back, me, Chris Haley, John Weston, CPDC, I didn't see him here. Karen Rose Gillis, downtown resident, yes, she's hiding, she's back there. Tom O'Connor, downtown business owner, he's right there. Sarah Brucalacchio, downtown property owner, is on Zoom. On Zoom, yep. Jay Jackson, who's here in the back right, downtown resident, and Dan Dewar as well, downtown business owner. And then the other two park members that aren't noted on here that I have mentioned before that aren't officially members, but Julie Mercier and Andrew just helping us through all of these meetings, providing lots of input, feedback, keeping us on topic and on time, most of the time. They've done a lot of exceptional work that they won't receive credit for. I believe they won't, but they've done over and above anything that I would have thought that they would have done other than just taking minutes and whatnot. They provided a lot of good feedback in all of this, so I just like their names noted here as well. So the downtown parking, the existing deficiencies that we've had, there's 24 plus regulations in the area, which is confusing and frustrating for everybody in enforcement. There's not enough spaces for specific users or permit types. There isn't enough permits available specifically for employees. The time limitations result in a constant moving of vehicles. Long-term parking occurring where turnover is needed. So the park charge was to review Reading's downtown parking system and regulations, to guide the preparation of comprehensive system modifications, to clarify and simplify Reading's downtown parking system from a user perspective and enforcement standpoint, maximize efficiency and access, minimize costs for visitors and users, to increase public education of parking areas. Park has also discussed the following topics at times, but understands they fall under the jurisdiction of other departments and boards. Overnight parking, which is held by the PTTF and the Select Board. Parking requirements within zoning bylaws is under CPDC. Privately owned parking areas and shared parking opportunities. Walkability and traffic calming measures. The ADA space count is done through the PTTF as well. So the downtown parking and park, prior to park, in this meeting, we've held 10 plus Zoom sessions scheduled and conducted, multiple downtown business walks and group meetings, 5 select board meetings, a water bill notification to residents, a code red alert to over 3,400 people, a 2020 survey. There will be also a survey with this one. So then Park reviewed the initial findings of the proposals from the 2019 to 2020 initiative. It doesn't say there as well, but we looked back, I believe it was 2016. I mean, we've gone through tons of prior information from all over the place. So we distributed a new parking survey townwide, mailing to all households, including renters. We had 800 plus respondents, 10 plus open meetings, email blast to downtown business, property owners, landlords, and property managers, resident meeting members, boards and commission, and survey respondents. I myself has probably received 3 or 4 of them at my downtown business, and then email, we always got stuff on time. So we provided an update to the Select Board on December 7th, 2021, held a big public forum on February 2nd, 2022, and I'd like to turn it over to Bernie to present with what he did, as well as people in his office that they weren't required to do, but they did it anyway. Part of the survey, the mapping and everything you've seen here is done by other volunteers, not just the park members, Bernie, Andrew and Julie. This was done by someone in Bernie's office that didn't have to. And it shows kind of all the hot points on where the survey took place. So, Bernie, it's all yours.
Yeah. Should I just stand up here? Is that,
Yes,
or
that's
sit
fine.
or stand?
If you stand it, be close, that'd be great.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I'm gonna cover the survey, but before we do that, then we're gonna jump into a whole lot of pretty gory detail, which hopefully won't make your eyes water, but I thought what I would do is just to try to summarize those recommendations, you know, before we get into all the detail. But let's just kind of jump into the survey. So what we did on this particular survey is we distributed it to many people. We made it available through our website, emails. We went to, we sort of did handouts to various people in town. So we believe that the difference between this survey
and the prior surveys that were done is that this is a much more broad participation of more people in the town. So if we go to the next slide, we had, over 820 total respondents, which is also a pretty good number. And we had we had 22, 23 questions combined with, check the box or multiple choice questions, but also open-ended questions. We felt the open-ended questions also gave people a lot of free room to discuss what they really think, should be done about parking. So one of the things, the question number 5, we felt was worth noting, how people get to their destinations in downtown. And most, a very high percentage, like well over 90%, drive. Then walking is the next, and some non-motorized vehicles and ride shares, public transportation. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. So many people come downtown and they get here by driving, and obviously the people who live downtown presumably walk more. A lot of people ride bikes. We've improved, the town has already improved the bicycle access as well by having more bikes. So next slide, question 19, when I can't find places to park downtown, where do I normally go? And that, here, the answer is yes for a lot of times, or no, they don't go anywhere else. So next slide. And this is, I think, there are several slides coming up here that are particularly important. The first is, how often or how much time do you need to park when you're downtown? And you can see that the preponderance of responses is probably no more than 1 to 2 hours. There clearly are people that need more than 2 to 4 hours and above. We didn't have a lot of, I would have guessed we'd had more responses if we had more commuters, I think, anticipating. But I think the hardest part, we did this survey in the middle of COVID, even though we said, do not answer these questions as if you're in COVID, think about what happens after COVID. But, still, I think there's a little bit of issue here. The next slide, please. And this question 8 is also particularly important in the sense that when people do go downtown, is it just for a single stop and they leave or not? And on the left, you can see that they often make 2 to 3 stops. So from a business generation point of view, we want to make sure that we provide enough parking for people, because if we lose those customers, it's not one business that loses it, but it could be 2 to 3 that lose it. And it could be, churches or other things as well. And a lot of people go from one of these 2 to 3 stops by walking, and some people have to drive. So that's kind of another important takeaway here. Next slide. And a lot of people, we had a lot of discussions, spent many hours saying, well, if I can't find a place, how long does it take me to walk if I can't find a place right next to where I want to go? And most people say it will take them about 3 minutes, some 3 to 4 and 4 to 5, you can see. We tried to give some education in this question to say that, people can walk a mile in 16 to 20 minutes just to be able to gauge, to allow people to say, okay, do I really walk a mile? A quarter of a mile would be 4 to 5 minutes. So that's kind of what we have here. And here we, on the right-hand side, we just have a little radius that kind of depicts that. Next slide. Okay, and then is there another slide after this that I had summarized? No, so let me just try to introduce what's coming up so that you can frame it in your minds a little bit. But there are a bunch of improvements that we feel like we've really addressed. The bulk of our time was spent talking about the lot behind CVS and the Brandy Court lot down closer to the train station behind, the Haven Street building. And that's really where we focused a lot of attention. And the reason for it was because people's views were that there were many cars parked there sort of all day. And the general intention was to try to create some additional turnover there. So one of the things that we are suggesting is to introduce some form of paid parking there. And you'll hear more about that. The other issue was that it was felt that many employees were parking in those lots, preventing customers from accessing the lots and doing their 2 to 3 stops for, less than an hour or two. So we've actually increased the number of total 2-hour parking spaces, increased the number of unrestricted spaces, but most importantly, designated a far greater number of employee parking spaces, which provides them some place to park. So if we're gonna add some paid parking behind those lots to try to create turnover, we have to give people that work there who might be using it someplace else to go, and you'll see more detail on that. Some of the other issues that we need to I think you'll still hear about more is overnight parking. Other cities around us have dealt with it by allowing people to park in municipal lots overnight and so forth. That issue has not yet fully been addressed, but I know the select board has dealt with that. We would be remiss if we didn't relay the comments that we had from some of the residents, new residents in buildings like the Postmark and others, where they're having difficulty because the number of spaces that were allocated to those developments is not enough to accommodate the people who have actually moved in there and trying to live there. That's something that, we would think that, there's some debate on this, but, one thing that we learned from the data that was collected by the Postmark residents suggested closer to 2 units per living unit, 2 parking spaces per living unit is closer to what people actually need. But again, there'll be lots of opinions on that. We'll talk a little bit about parking garage, handicap access. We probably could use, some better or more handicap issues. One thing that is an issue is that we've lowered the number of spaces for residents only for the commuters. Kiosks, you'll hear more about. And lastly, we've suggested that the parking, in order to encourage, more use of public transportation and so on and so forth, and primarily to be in line with all the other communities all around us who basically charge nothing for resident parking permits. We're suggesting that be $25 for both employee and residents. So let me stop there, ask if anybody has any quick questions. Otherwise, we'll get going on to the next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Barney. I know you guys, I agree, you've worked incredibly hard on this, and I thank you. It's a tough subject. I had a general question as I've been visiting the Pleasant Street Center recently. I noticed behind the closed Walgreens, there are now dedicated RPD spots. I didn't know if those were factored into your discussions, like, are they permanent, and what impact is that?
Reading Police Department spots behind the.
Walgreens, because that's one of the area you looked at,
Yeah,
right?
we
If it
did
isn't,
talk
then I
about
will try.
that Herndon lot, I think we talked about, and I think there were, that was something that we felt, had some potential because it doesn't get a tremendous amount of utilization, but I know the police department has been,
I'm sorry, Bree, I need to
requesting that.
interject. The recommendation is to leave the parking designations in that lot as they are. And it does get utilized.
So it was
quite a lot.
discussed. That was really my question.
Employee parking, and then part of it is actually not owned by the town, but is owned by the Walgreens. So.
Right.
That's a good question. So just for clarification, so that whole lot is not town owned, but
Most of it is, but the spots that are adjacent to the wall of
Okay.
Walgreens are owned by that building,
Walgreens.
the artist formerly.
Just
known as
those.
Walgreens.
I actually thought that whole lot was Walgreens, so that's another reason why I was asking.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
there's some
thank you,
part of it.
appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any other board questions, comments?
Two questions. First of all, on page, I guess, 23 of our packet,
I'm gonna, if it's after my presentation,
okay,
you might
Sorry.
wanna hold that
Yep.
because the people will
okay.
deliver on it. So I'm just trying to take questions on
Yeah.
the survey and the introduction.
It is a red page, but I do have a question, just a procedural question about something in the blue pages that you just went through, Mr. Horn. How does the PTTTF relate to the parks?
So we were established by the select board. The PTTF is a staff-only organization that is composed of a lot of people in the town, a lot of staff members, and they meet to try to deal with on an ongoing basis, and they will continue to do this. So we, and technically, we sort of report to the PTTF, who kind of listened and gave us feedback on our recommendations, and then we pass those final recommendations on to you for your consideration and possibly vote.
Just a clarifying question on that, so the PTTF has looked at these recommendations and
Yes, and we've vetted these to the public several different times, changed our recommendations based on feedback that we got from the public as well. So one of the charges that you gave us was to look at this stuff, study it, make recommendations, get public feedback, adjust accordingly, and then finally come back to you. That doesn't mean we might not have more feedback and other things, but this is definitely something that, we'll be talking about for years to come.
thanks. Other questions from board members? All right, let's go from blue to red.
Hi, Liz Whiteland, 7 Gilmore Avenue. Member of Park, it's our favorite committee here in town. And Jackie, just to clarify for you, the PTTTF includes Deputy Chief Amendola and people in the police, people from engineering. So they're the people who actually cope with all of this when all is said and done.
Okay.
So yeah, they've provided a lot of input and great help on this.
All right, so as Bernie foreshadowed, we were looking at both parking lots and on-street parking and trying to come up with a holistic approach to solve the challenges downtown that Chris outlined. So I'm gonna take you through the on-street parking recommendations that we're making. As a summary statement, just for clarity beforehand, because I know Bernie foreshadowed some paid parking in lots as an option, all of the on-street parking for residents would continue to be free. When we get into some permit areas, there are some potential costs associated with permits, but I don't want people to think that suddenly every street in Reading is now going to be a paid parking situation. Absolutely not. The on-street parking continues to be free. All right, so what were we trying to do? Increase the number of dedicated employee parking spaces and therefore increase the number of employee parking permits available. So right now, as mentioned, one of the challenges is that a lot of the businesses downtown have a lot of employees who are using up a lot of the spaces for many hours at a time in areas where we're hoping that we have turnover so that people can go in and out and get their prescription, people can go out and get their sandwich and so on and so forth. But the places where there is currently employee permit parking, there's just a limited number of spaces and therefore a limited number of permits available. At one point, the police department allowed a greater number of permits, but then there were complaints that people were paying hundreds of dollars for a permit and then couldn't find space. And so part of what we are proposing is a large increase of employee parking, again, out of what we are calling fondly the inner core, so that employees who are going to be sitting there all day are not taking up the spaces where residents and other folks visiting town might just want to be in and out. So our proposals, as we'll go through, could allow an increase of 113 employee parking spaces, not including unregulated areas. And let me also point out that all of these employee parking spaces are 2 hour for anyone or all day with employee permit. So it's not saying, we've taken all these spaces and nobody else can park there. If it's an empty space and you don't have an employee permit, you can still park there for 2 hours just like any other 2 hour parking downtown, right? So it's not taking away 2 hour parking necessarily. So in terms of where this parking could be added, and we'll go through, there's a fabulous spreadsheet on the next page, but Lowell Street, Woburn Street, High Street, Chute Street, Haven Street, Chapin Ave, and Harnden Street all have opportunities where we can be adding significant parking spaces. Again, all areas would still allow public 2 hour parking. And then the other recommendation we're making is modify the pricing of employee permits to incentivize the permit and parking within the outer core. So we want to make it possible for businesses to have more permits so that it is not cost prohibitive. I will say, as a small business owner myself, I do not buy an employee permit for all of my employees because, first of all, they're all very part-time, and to spend hundreds of dollars per person on something that they might be using only twice a week for 4 hours at a crack, for me, is not worth it. There are other businesses that have far more employees and far more
full-time employees that also just need greater availability of spaces, like many of the medical practices and dental practices downtown in particular. So one thing that we have discussed with the PTTTF is that when we are trying to push some of this employee parking to the outer core, there does need to be some further exploration from the town in terms of safety and lighting, because some of these areas that we're suggesting, walkability isn't the greatest at the moment, so we would need some improvements there. Next, Andrew, I assume that's you out in the world doing this. Let's see, am I gonna be able to? So I guess let me ask you procedurally, do you want me to take you through the painful line by line? I'm happy to do it.
I wouldn't think so.
This is the second time it's been in our packets.
I know, I mean, I know you've had a chance to review, and if you have any questions about specific spots, by all means. But basically, do know that we literally looked at each street, like actually looked at it. Karen did a lot of actually marching around. Many of us did a lot of marching around in actual streets. I actually bought a little contract wheel where you can measure the feet in the back of my car. And so we have carefully looked at all of these options. So the recommendations are well thought out. I guess I'll just put it that way.
Just before you move on, would
Yeah.
it be worth just kind of summarizing what's on the bottom that I can actually read, because I have it on my computer if that's easier, but I think that's a good summary in terms of the
Yes.
number of spots.
Yes, so the existing total
1, 2, 3.
spaces of 123, whereas proposed changes would raise it up to 236. And as we were also discussing with Deputy Chief Amendola about the permits, we were also saying, like, it is also worth revisiting the number of permits issued even beyond this, acknowledging that there are actually quite a few businesses with a lot of part-time employees. So it's worth, if the cost isn't prohibitive for the permit, it is not so much, wouldn't be such a risk to say to people, give it a try, and you should still be able to find a spot for your, so anyway, that's employee on-street parking. On-street regulation proposals for customer and public parking. So we want to increase the number of public 2-hour only parking spaces in the inner core to allow for more parking turnover and availability to customers and users in downtown. So our proposals could allow for an increase of about 54 spaces with a 2-hour designation on Ash Street and Gould Street and Vine and High Street and Chapin Avenue. There are some of those spaces right now are unregulated, or some of them have different regulations. Again, as we're trying to streamline so that when you're going downtown, there isn't such a disparity between on one street it's this, on another street it's that. That's part of what this is all about. And again, the Vine, High Street, and Chapin Chapin Avenue areas, some of that is all-day parking with employee permits. So again, it's more 2-hour parking available or permit parking. There are a few places we're also recommending adding even shorter term parking. So you'll note that right now there are a few places downtown that are a 30-minute spot. There are a couple spots in front of CVS to get people in and out. There's a spot in front of the Quick Stop. Also gets people in and out. We're recommending some 30-minute spaces potentially in front of Drew Stews and the Mathnasium because they have a lot of turnover there, to try to facilitate, again, areas where we really want to move traffic along, but all of those have within steps 2-hour parking available. So if you were at Drew Stews, in and out 30 minutes, but right across the street, there are still plenty of 2 hours. So in one direction, you get it one way, one direction another. So that'll move people along. All of this parking is currently and recommended to be unregulated after 5 p.m. So any of the regulations that we're talking about, we really are just talking during business hours. It's from 8 to 5 is what these regulations are about. That is the way things currently are, and we are not recommending a change. If for no other reason, then it would require more staff to be regulating after hours. Andrew, I think we can, yeah.
Was that a quick question?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Should that be and weekends? After 5 p.m. and, or that just?
Oh, and weekend, yeah. So right now it is Monday through Friday, even though we like to think of it as Saturday. Is it also Saturday?
On the 30 minutes, yeah.
It is, so it says it on the signs. I'm not sure that it's actually being regulated on Saturdays.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Well, signage is gonna be key to all this.
Yes.
A lot of signage.
It's enforcement that's gonna be key.
Yeah, enforcement is
Well, yeah, of course. But for residents and people who are not residents, when you go to an unfamiliar area, just seeing the peace sign's one thing, but then knowing what is 2 hour, knowing what is 4 hour, on a particular street, you know, that can become challenging. You know, and most of downtown is utilized by Reading residents, but a lot are, you know, giving someone a ride or visiting or the caregiver or whatever. But, you know, the signage has improved. But I think with implementing this, I'm sure staff and you guys have talked about, you know, even more signage to direct people and make them feel comfortable that they made the right choice.
Absolutely, clarifying signage is a key component. So to answer the original question, really, we're talking Monday through Friday. 8 to 5.
Did you have a question on the red slides?
And so currently, there are 381 two-hour parking spaces. We're proposing 435. 14.17% increase.
Jackie, do you have a question?
Yeah, currently, how much does an employee permit in the inner core cost, or is that dependent?
So employee parking isn't actually in the inner core, it is already in the outer core where the spaces are. The
Okay.
permits are 260, what?
A year.
260.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, is that per permit or is that?
per
for-
permit.
Okay.
And generally, the way you described it, it seems like it's not one of those things that could easily be like, on your way out the door, hand out the permits the
Well,
next
you know what, I will
time.
say, the good news is now, it has changed so that so originally, for me, in my 4.5 years of experience with it, when I first opened my business, it was per license plate, like the permit actually had a license plate on it, you could not transfer it to another car. Now you actually can transfer them, you could pass them off. Yeah, which is handy.
It's an investment, so thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure. All right, on-street regulation proposals for resident parking. We want to, so there are some places, particularly close to the train station, that are resident only, and part of this is, of course, to make sure that Reading residents have first crack at the commuter rail. And that's one of the fabulous benefits of living in town. So we want to maintain the existing resident-only parking that is north of the tracks, Green Street, Gould Street, Linden Street, Bancroft Avenue, and Shute Street. We wanted to add 9 spaces on Lower Sanborn Street for residents with no off-street dedicated parking. So this is within, this isn't actually right near the train station, it's up a little bit. There are a couple buildings on Sanborn Street that have been there long enough, like, that they have no parking as part of those buildings. Like one of them was built in 1932 or, you know, when people were like going down to the trolley or whatever. So we did hear from the residents and the owner of one of those buildings saying, hey, could you please provide a consideration? Because what they have right now is they actually have an agreement where they have overnight parking off-site. So they've taken care of their own overnight problem, but they don't actually have an easy way to park during the day for longer than 2 hours at the moment. So we are recommending that we add resident parking on Lower Sanborn Street. Right next to the commuter rail station, we want to reallocate 16 spaces. And we want to change the regulation hours for all of the resident parking on both sides of the track all over to 6 to 9:30. It's currently 6 to 10:30. And right now, you know, in terms of the education that would be helpful in the community, people I think lose track of the fact that from that 10:30 on, or as we're proposing 9:30 on, like anybody can park there for any amount of time. Like this is an option. You could actually, if there's an open space at the train station at 10:30 right now, park there and make a day of it. Right? You can walk all the way around downtown. I know, you're sitting there thinking, I didn't even know that. People don't know that.
But I need my sticker, right? My resident
No,
sticker.
after 10:30,
I
it
don't
is
need a sticker.
unregulated,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Am I,
That's right.
I'm like
Okay.
losing my
I'll
mind
have
here.
to go
No,
investigate those
unregulated.
options, cause
So that resident permit thing is only up until 10:30. We're actually saying knock it back to 9:30 because the bulk of what is happening from a commuting standpoint is kind of taken care of by 9:30. Also, to facilitate more employee options, particularly for some of the medical and dental practices at the bottom of the hill, while we are trying to get them enough employee parking, because many of them come in at 7, 8, and then, you know, some of them have later shifts. They have a lot of employees, so this could actually solve some of the later in the day parking problems from an employee standpoint as well. So,
And that won't require a permit?
well, not, so after 9:30.
Right, after 9:30.
Free for all.
Right, gotcha.
It's all gonna be about signage,
Anyway.
right?
Anybody else? Oh, and that is true right now, from
Right,
10:30 on,
right.
but people don't actually,
Right.
this is one of those education things, like, hey, everybody, you could be parking here when it's empty at 10:30. Again, as foreshadowed, we're looking to modify permit pricing, both for the resident and the employee. So we're saying, let's knock this back down to $25 for both of those things. Those recommendations are for two reasons. One, it is our understanding that the town doesn't actually rely on this money. This is not like part of the budget planning. It's not like, oh, we're really counting on that revenue. It was more that it was a behavior modification. It's like getting people to get one if you really mean it, kind of thing. Particularly for the employee ones, right? Of course, there's paperwork in either case. But also as we looked at other towns and what they had, as Bernie was mentioning, most towns, actually a lot of this is free. So Reading is one of the few places where you're actually paying for these kinds of permits. Now, an important difference is that if, for example, you're thinking of Woburn, you're like, well, if I'm parking at the commuter rail, there's a charge there. That is true. And same here, the MBTA does own one of the lots. You're still gonna have to pay the MBTA if you park in their lot. But we're saying for the Reading-owned stuff, let's think about changing the permit pricing. Andrew, I think we can advance. Another mind-numbing spreadsheet.
Questions? Yep.
I was gonna say, I think from a historical perspective, this goes back to Finance Committee when we were desperate for every little bit of revenue and we decided to raise those permit prices and things just look different right now.
Well, and that's the thing, and that's a valid perspective. If you're like, you know what, the Finance Committee actually is counting on those dollars, so go to Hell Park, we're keeping it where it is. That is a valid response. But it was one of those things when we kind of looked back, we were like, I don't know that there's a reason per se for the permits to be the price that they are, other than
It's pre-9,
And I think the other
2018
issue was that
probably.
the most recent developments downtown have generated about $10 million of additional tax revenue for the town. And so maybe the $100,000 pales in comparison to that extra revenue. And so maybe the idea is to make it a little bit more, easy for people to park. Try to create less friction so that people can go in and out.
great point.
Liz, quick
Yeah.
question. When do most of the businesses that aren't serving breakfast or kind of other long hours, do they tend to open around 9:30, 9 to 9:30? Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I would say a lot of us from a retail perspective open at 10, some open at 11. It's a little bit of a free-for-all. Honestly, I don't know that I could say there's a huge consistency because you have retail, you have hair salons, you have restaurants, so it's kind of a staggered. And I don't think there's one easy answer to that, unfortunately. But certainly by 11, everybody's got something going on.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the 10:30 to 9:30. It sounds like that actually should help.
Oh, absolutely it could. And for those, like I open at 10, but my staff comes at 9:30. We all have the pre-work before we open, so for sure.
Thank you.
Andrew, can you go back to that map for a sec? Thanks. So just since the visual is often more helpful than the spreadsheet, this is I'm sure you've spent a lot of time cuddled up in bed at night with your packet looking at this, but so just to clarify, like the red is all of the resident permit parking I was just talking about. The blue are the proposed employees, so you see it's all kind of out. And this is the MBTA lot. And then all the green is good old 2 hour, our usual deal. So that's the streets.
Questions from board members? Quick question on the Saturday issue. Is Saturday essentially equivalent to Monday through Friday in terms of downtown traffic?
So it's different. There's still a high volume, but it is sort of a different thing, right? There's a lot of like financial, insurance-y, whatever kind of businesses downtown, and on Saturdays, they're not there. There's a lot, it is a different kind of traffic downtown on Saturdays and Sundays. So I can't say that Saturdays are less busy, but it's a different kind of busy. So personally, as somebody who is downtown all of the days, the way it's working, it's working out.
Leaving the regulation as it is. in
Yeah, I
terms of
mean,
timing.
if we had the luxury of more enforcement on Saturdays too, sure, that would be great, but I wouldn't lose sleep over it. That is my personal anecdotal opinion. I do not speak for the entire park committee on that one.
Are there questions from the public at this point? Anything we've seen? Mr. Brown?
Yes, you said 9:30 is the cutoff point? People can pack nothing,
Right now, it's 10:30,
I know.
but we were recommending 9:30.
How does that coincide with the last commuter train going into Boston?
So that schedule has been, and actually, Jed, you probably have more insight into the ebbs and flows of the commuter rail right now. They keep changing the schedule a little bit, am I right?
They do, yeah. Only because of COVID, yes.
Right, but, well, because of COVID, but actually, Jay works for the MBTA, that's why I'm gesturing wildly at him. Even pre-COVID, they were starting to examine some potential changes, and it's something that they do kind of on an ongoing basis. So the 9:30 recommendation is our best guess based on both the last couple of years, what we saw before, and where we think it's headed.
If I remember pre-COVID, after 8:30, I think it might have been like an 8:55 train, then everything goes to once an hour. That helps.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Ann Ward, I live on Bancroft Avenue. This isn't really a parking question, except that it would take away a couple of parking spaces. If we could use a crosswalk on Haven Street in front of the post office.
I agree.
I don't know.
As a person who frankly just roams back and forth across Haven Street often during the day, yeah, I'd be on board with that. But yeah, I have no authority. I'm just saying, I agree.
It just occurred to me, it's been bothering me for a while.
I will say that we will be completely redoing Haven Street probably in the next 2 to 5 years. But I'll bring it up to DPW and see if something could be done ahead of time.
Any other questions, comments? Caitlin, anything on Zoom?
I do not see anything, no.
We have a couple more sections to go through.
No, they just mean for my section. That's why I'm backing away.
I saw the Q&A, sorry. I'm following the script.
Now we have another section coming up.
Great.
It's a real humdinger, you're gonna
Wait,
love
there's
it, it's
more.
parking lots, it's a blast.
Teal.
All right, yep, teal, we're on teal.
I'm the teal girl, one everybody wants to hear from. My name's Karen Rose Gillis. I live at Linden Street. I'm in charge of the kiosks, which causes a lot of stress for a lot of people. Our discussions around the kiosks, I think a lot of us started out at the beginning thinking no paid parking. And then as we went through this whole process, we discovered that it's really a great solution to a lot of different things. For the most part, from the survey, a lot of people come really quickly and it wouldn't impact a lot of people at all. But it does allow the town to regulate the parking lots to prevent long-term parkers who are taking up spaces for people. Employees, construction vehicles, like it's been a mixed mash of stuff the last couple of years. So this way it would standardize both lots and everyone's on an even playing field. And most people probably won't pay for parking, which is a good thing, but it will allow people to stay longer if they want to. So the proposal is, and I can't tell if I can actually see that or not, so the proposal is to install 2 kiosks at both the Upper Haven lot and the Brandy Court lot. These would be solar powered kiosks so that you could actually move them around if you need to. You don't need to hook up a power thing or anything. The goal is to increase the turnover, as we said, and I think training and education for people will be a huge part of the success of the kiosks, because I think there's some confusion now where people have commented where I don't want to have to go back to my car after an hour and change and go back in. And so the goal is you enter your license plate when you get there, and then you either come back within an hour or you don't, but your license plate information is already there. So you don't have to go back to your car after an hour to start paying for it. Education is going to be a huge part of the success of this entire thing. So we had talked in depth about creating maps for employee parking and all this other stuff, so. The potential pricing scheme that we came up with was free for the first hour. And after that, it would be $1 an hour up to a certain number of hours, and the more hours, it gets more expensive. And that would also, if people wanna park there all day, they'll pay, but it would discourage people parking all day. This is also Monday through Friday.
Yeah, since you're looking at me, I just wanna clarify, it's only free for the first hour if you stay for an hour or less.
Yes.
It's very important to know that.
Yes, so we had gone back and forth, we weren't quite sure of how it ran, you know, do you stay for an hour, you go back out? So if you're there over an hour, you're gonna pay $1 an hour, including the first hour. But if you're gone within an hour, it doesn't cost you anything. Took us some time to figure that out. It would be Monday through Friday, but these programs have a lot of flexibility built into them, so if we decided, let's say the business has changed, like the dentist office moves and you've got a restaurant and all of a sudden, you know, you need to have them pay for parking at night, you can change, you can have it certain price during the day, certain things at night, it's very, very flexible. The system that we discussed and decided to suggest is a pay-by-plate system, so that it would be your license plate that would be the information in the tracking. There's a lot of privacy issues involved with it, and each of the kiosks, the software takes into consideration privacy and all that. We're not gonna get into those nitty-gritty details right now, but privacy is there. So that, with that particular system, you don't have to go back to your car after an hour or 2 hours. So you just go once and you're done. So it's much easier to use than some of the other plans that we saw. The different apps that you can use for these, the T currently uses pay by phone, but we have, which we would want to stay consistent with the T since it's so close and you want to kind of keep it easy for everybody to do. We did discover a second app that might also be something that we want to consider, and we also discovered, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of these systems can use more than one app.
Okay, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that would also be something to consider, which is great, because, so what we did, we voted, you can go to the next slide, thanks. We voted to recommend that the select board make a request to the town meeting for $110,000 to cover the upfront costs for the kiosks and 2 handheld devices. The costs, we've discovered that the cost might be a lot less than that, but we wanted to keep the request the same in case there's contingency fees that we're not aware of. Everything costs a lot more now than it did 2 months ago, and the plan is to reimburse the town for the money by the money that it brings in. The so-called estimate for payback is between 1 and 3 years. Each town that Julie had talked to, they were very surprised at how fast they recovered their money. So granted, we have no idea how long it's gonna take, but the chances are it won't take long at all. So I don't think that that should be a consideration for any concerns to anybody. The funds from the kiosks can also be put into what they call a parking benefit district. So all the funds that come in could be used to better the downtown area. There's probably restrictions, but you come up with a committee that decides how they're gonna use the funds, and if you raise a lot of money, you can do a lot of things downtown, whether it be lighting or sidewalks or whatever. So then there's also the license plate recognition software. You can base a lot of things based on the data that you can collect. The data that you collect is privatized through the system, but it can also help us figure out what works best, what's not working, what changes you have to make, you know, so there's ways you can analyze the data as you go and make changes year after year to make it more profitable or better for the town, or make it less costing. You know, I mean, if we make a lot of money, that'd be great, but if we're making too much money, maybe we wanna not charge as much, I guess. And that's about all I have. I think the next sentence is, next slide is questions.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
You can answer this, or Julie, in your research on, I'm guessing the payback included enforcement fines, not just the kiosk money?
It did not actually.
It did not, okay. All right, thanks.
Question?
Chris? Sorry.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mark. And thanks, Karen. Yeah, mainly the payback to 1 to 3 years, this isn't about the payback. It's about the enforcement and getting people to be be able to park downtown and be able to find a spot. So even if the payback was 10 years, it's $100,000 is nothing in the grand scheme of things. It's more of just controlling the flow of traffic that's down there. So if it's 1 year, 1 year fantastic, 3 years, it is what it is, as long as everyone can find a spot again. So.
Yes.
Thanks. Question in the back, looks like Liz.
I was just gonna add to what Chris and Karen said. So part of this is, it's about helping to change behavior and so that there will be more turnover as turnover is required, but it's also empowering people who actually do have a need to stay downtown longer. So right now, if you wanted to go out to lunch and get your hair done and go shopping, you're gonna have to move your car. But if you're like, you know what, I'm willing to pay $4 to leave my car in one spot and do all those things. So it's a combination of both turnover and empowering people to have longer term parking on the occasions that they need it.
Great. Questions, please?
Thanks, Mark. I may have missed it. I'm just curious, was there any discussion about what the enforcement consequences are? I'm not even aware whether there are, what the penalties or consequences are now, but is there any recommendation with regard to what would happen if someone stayed over? What's the cost?
Well, you heard about the new tasers. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just
kidding.
Just kidding.
The short answer is we didn't get into
so bad.
how much the ticket would be if you went over.
It's $20 on the resident streets, even for residents now.
That's not bad. Could be worse.
Well, that would have to be adjusted for the kiosk because it's $5 an hour after 4 hours, so that's $20 right out of the gate. You would just not take a ticket. I mean, you'd take the
Well,
ticket.
if they're paying for it, you wouldn't have to ticket them.
No,
Yeah,
what I'm saying is it can't be $20, the penalty, because they could just park there for the entire day and take the $20 ticket instead of paying the money, which would be $28 or something. You see what I mean? Because it's $5 an hour after the first 4 hours. So that would be 20 plus your original 4, so that's $24. You'd make money by just not paying to park. Because if you got the ticket.
Spread around.
Well, I'm just saying
So it could be an incentive to
Yes.
change the ticket price.
Change
The ticket
right.
price, yes,
Yes.
that's,
For just the lots.
that is the long
not
way
the
of the
public
argument.
streets.
It's always a loophole, Karen.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
I will always share that.
Yes, has there been any thought to exempting like disabled people in the disabled parking? For example, my disabled sister gets her dental appointment done and she parks in the CVS lot. And the hour is a little short too, like she may not be able to get in and out within an hour. So it's just gonna be hard for her to deal with kiosking and, I just wasn't sure, is it gonna be for everybody who parks there, even disabled people?
I don't think that it includes the handicap
There's no charging on
spaces,
handicap
So
spaces.
they're not,
Okay,
yeah.
so she'd be able to park in all
Oh,
the
yeah,
stuff
the
and she'd be
handicap
exempt from
spots
all
are
of that.
exempt from everything, I think.
Yeah, she has a hang tag, yeah. But I also just think, for people who aren't handicapped, some appointments do take an hour. So an hour is a little short in my personal view, but, that's.
Well, there's still 2-hour parking on the streets.
Right.
Okay, for non-disabled, okay.
Right,
Fair
so none of the parking on the streets has been changed and that's all 2 hours, so this doesn't impact any of that.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, if I park in the CVS lot, by the way, it's parking lot number 1, not CVS. For 55 minutes, I hop my car and get out to the other parking lot. Does the kiosk pick up that I moved?
Does it? Yeah. So the 2 kiosks in CVS would be connected to the 2 in,
Great question.
it is a good question, I don't,
Within the same lot, they definitely could.
You found the loop.
but if you went to a different lot,
Yeah, that's something.
ways to get around the system.
Always gotta
Broke
find
the
a way
matrix.
around.
I think that the question on enforcement though is a very important one because when the town was without an enforcement officer for many months and recently hired one, and I think it was it Tom? That you made the observation that once the new enforcement officers, wasn't even, it might have been even before the new enforcement officer, there were a bunch of tickets issued behind lots 1 and presumably 2. And that actually created a lot of turnover that we were looking for. So it's very possible that with the money we're spending on enforcement, we could actually generate the turnover we wanted. We debated whether that meant that we did or didn't need the kiosks, but by the time we get the kiosks, we'll know a little bit more about that as the enforcement officer patrols more and and enforces the regulations that are in place already.
Great, just a quick comment, I believe that town meeting is in the budget, is there an increase in the enforcement?
There
Am I
is, so,
correct?
so the parking enforcement officer is budgeted for 28 hours right now, and we are proposing an increase to 32.5 hours. And hopefully, we will be looking to make that a full-time position if everything goes as planned.
So enforcement's an important part, and we'll have to make sure the town lives up to its responsibilities for that. Mr. Brown?
Just for a little information, Route 28 was finished in 1930. 1931, they started complaining about the speed and the traffic, lack of parking was down to 30. So good luck on it.
Did I see your hand, Chris?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that counts.
Quick question to the committee, was there any, cause I know we talked about it last year before the committee was formed about doing one lot as a test. So it seems like all or nothing was determined as the best approach versus let's do some kiosks and CVS, enforce it, monitor the data, see how it goes. If we get too many complaints and nothing changes, you know, I don't know if that cuts the cost in half or not, but was that debated or brought up?
We did look at both lots individually and as a collective whole. And we
Sorry,
found-
so the people can't hear you on Zoom, so it's just, yeah, if you don't mind, if you're talking, just one, sorry.
We looked at both lots together and separately. Part of it was an equity issue. We didn't want to suddenly be like, oh, this lot is being regulated and this one isn't. And also the use cases are a little different in each of them in terms of what's happening. So when the town was making an investment in equipment and monitoring, we did, we were like, these are the two lots where it needs to happen if it's gonna happen. So there would definitely be efficiencies in just doing it all at once.
Okay, no,
Sorry.
that's fair.
No, that's fine, just check.
I think they're all set. Thank you. Just on behalf of an email that the select board received today, from a Ms. Parr, she didn't include her address, but I was wondering, she had concerns about parking for the church at the corner of Woburn and Shute Street and mentions potentially needing to put, cones out in the morning to make sure people can get. I'm just wondering if any of these folks, as we talked about, this has been a very public process. Have you heard these concerns before?
We haven't heard anything
No,
from
no,
the church,
so-
have we?
Well,
Thank you, appreciate it.
so at one point when the PTTF was joining us in one of our meetings, we were discussing the fact that, we have a couple funeral homes, we have churches, and that when they have funerals or other important services, that they already, that's a thing. People already work around that, and so that's not a problem. That wouldn't be any different. Now, I know Mary Parr's concerns were, suddenly if this is employee parking, again, it's still 2 hour or all day with employee parking. So I think everybody would keep an eye on it. But from what we've heard about the employees in that region, I don't think Shute Street is actually gonna get a lot of employee. It's gonna be an option, but it's not the closest thing for a lot of these employees anyway.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you guys had heard from them. I didn't want that
Mary
to.
had come to another couple of meetings too, so yes.
Awesome, and I don't think I didn't see in your plan anywhere for orange cone situations, so I don't think we wanna encourage that, right?
Well, again, when people are having funerals or something like that, there are already orange cone situations, but that is beyond the scope of this text.
Thank you.
Any questions on Zoom, Caitlin?
I don't see any now.
Yes, please, in the back.
Tom O'Connor, businessman and also a resident of Reading.
And member of the park.
And member of the park committee, representing the senior citizens as it was known on the committee. I'm here to speak against the kiosks. I think that the enforcement of the parking lot, the CVS parking lot, with the enforcement officer will move the traffic substantially so that we will get the spaces that we need. I do agree there are certain times of day that you may have to wait a few minutes to find a spot. But I also feel that the kiosks, if you're an employee, you're not being driven out of the lot because for your hourly wage, you may decide as an employee just to eat the price of staying in that lot all day long. So we're really, in my opinion, not chasing them out of the lot, which was discussed by the committee to encourage them to go outside of the CVS lot. I also feel that the kiosk, if we are gonna go in that direction, I think you have to take into consideration that the parking enforcement ends at 5 o'clock. And I think that if we're going to have the kiosks, then let's either not do it halfway, then jump in and have the kiosks. In other towns I've gone, Newburyport and Rockport and some other towns, it's enforced where you have to use the kiosks all the time, and it is enforced. And if the proposal is to use them, I don't think it makes sense to stop it at 5 o'clock. That does not mean, please do not misinterpret my words, because you've got to remember that technically that parking lot will become available at 4 o'clock because your first hour is free. And then after that, there is no enforcement in the back lot. In conclusion, I'd just like to say, having business down there for many years and seen the CVS lot used, and it is used more now than it ever is at certain times, I really think that I'd like to give the enforcement officer, which the town, in town meeting, is proposing, I'd like to give that a shot before we jump into something that I'm not sure the town's ready, because it's been discussed. I think a large percentage of the town is headed to the senior citizen age group. Not that we're not computer wise, but I would just end by saying if it wasn't for my grandkids, I wouldn't know how to turn on a computer. But thank you for the time.
You may not want to let them drive, Tom, however. Jay?
We have another section that we have to get through, I think, at least one or two. Is that are you gonna take that up, or are you gonna make a comment?
I was gonna make a public comment.
Okay. I just wanna be mindful of everybody's time, that we still have a couple more to go through.
Thanks, Bernie, appreciate it. So yeah, I'm Jay. I'm a transportation engineer. I do work for the T. I'm a resident on Salem Street. And I just wanted to kind of make some comments on for me, not necessarily in the park. And I want to think about some of the issues that we've heard and some of the letters that we've received, where people saying that they had a hard time like crossing the street, or they had a hard time because of lighting or these different issues. Well, that might drive someone, literally drive them to actually drive, which takes up a spot. So if you're able to fix any of those issues and connect more for people that can get there by biking, by walking, then that's someone who isn't taking up a parking spot. That's someone who isn't driving. And we live in such an amazing community here. Like, this town is really amazing. Now, there's a lot of great, really nice, pretty towns in this area, but throughout the rest of the country, it's not. Like, there's a lot of places that are really ugly and just don't have nice downtowns, and it's just really wide roads and really, speeding, and it's like you got a Walmart and an Applebee's, and those are options. And we have so much here as a gem, and this is like a place and not a throughput. And it's always challenging when we see 28, the state, for instance, which I work very closely with MassDOT, they did their road diet, and then we could continue doing that in the middle, actually, and can continue that. The congestion isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, not having parking isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can actually be a desirable place. There's lots of great parking in Iowa. There's a lot of great roads. But who wants to go there? And so, I'm just thinking about it, for instance, with 28 and 129, unfortunately for them, they're just really great cut throughs for the people that are on the highway. And there's just no amount of building out anything, you know, whether it's a signal or whether it's expanding the lanes or some sort of cut through that you're ever gonna be able to satisfy the demand. And you all see it, whenever there's a crash on 95, I live on 129, completely jammed. So without taking up too much of everyone's time, I just wanted to mention real quickly about the Haven Street crosswalk, cause it's while it's a good suggestion, it's not what's the root problem? We wanna make sure we think about the root problem. And it's that cars are driving too fast and they're not yielding when you're trying to cross the street.
Well, also there's parking, you gotta get between the parked cars. It's
You're
not a
absolutely
good
right.
thing.
So, but if you designed the road in a way where the car felt like they're a guest and the pedestrian felt like they were the priority, then you wouldn't necessarily have that problem. And there's a variety of ways to do that. I'm not gonna get into that here, and your designers hopefully will think of those things. But I do have a list, and I won't give it to you now, but I can share it later, of just different like little kind of cut throughs that you can create that you can increase the walkability, and just small like things that we can do. Like several pedestrian barriers that we could just try to fix. But yeah, basically that's what I'm saying, reducing demand by better walkability and biking, and keeping Reading as an awesome destination and not a thoroughfare to help people get to North Reading or Wilmington or wherever they want to get through that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, is it a quick one?
One more, I'll try to keep quiet. We talked about kiosks. How's that gonna affect the plowing in the winter time? Are we gonna end up with some guy plowing the parking lot and all of a sudden $110,000 kiosk has gone down the tubes?
So I don't think we are as far as location, like where they're going, but I will ensure that they're placed in a location that is not gonna get damaged.
In all due respect, the road that you know where is paved, good luck. Good intentions.
All right, let's roll on, Bernie.
Thank you very much for doing this.
So our next
You're like my report.
So our next section is, now John Weston, I think, was going to give this, is that? John,
I'm here.
Thank you.
John?
So it's nearly impossible to talk about parking in Reading without someone bringing up the idea of a parking garage. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And you know, it certainly came up in the outreach that we did and the discussions that we had. You know, our study wasn't focused on whether a parking, structured parking or a parking garage is feasible or reasonable, but certainly a concept that that we discussed and others discussed. And to cut to the chase here, as we're spending a lot of time here, is that coming out of our this committee, we thought that it was a reasonable recommendation to make to your board that this study, the town should hire a consultant to really look at the feasibility of structured parking in the downtown area. When we say that, right, I want to make sure that we're clear on a couple of things. One is that any of the data that we collected didn't necessarily lead us one way or another in terms of the demand for a new parking structure. So, right, we were focused more on like how do we manage the parking spaces that we have now, not necessarily if we build a parking structure, would that create more demand? How would that work? Right, that's a whole nother sort of layer of study that we didn't do. So I don't want our recommendation to be construed that we think parking structure is needed. We do think that we need as a town to look at it. We have here listed on the slide, it has been looked at in 2007, 2009, 2019. I mean, it continues to be looked at in just really a cursory way, and never with an engineering study or a real demand or economic study. So that's really what our recommendation is here. There are a parking structure, in looking at the couple of town-owned lots that we have, there is nothing in those lots that that say that it absolutely structure couldn't work. There's certainly a lot of limitations in terms of the ownership and the circulation. So it's not obvious that it could work or it couldn't work, and really needs a better look. And there was a lot of discussion about some of the real benefits that a parking garage could provide, a place during snow events, and even using the structured parking for to provide sort of other spaces, flexible spaces that might need to be in a structure, but not necessarily in a building. So I think that is that covers things. I think it was the 2009 study that there were some layouts done of potential parking structures that all looked to be feasible. So I think the question here is, is this the way, is this something that the town wants to invest in? Right. That question goes both to does the town want to invest in a parking structure, but also we did hear in the public comment that that even money set aside for a consultant to look at this, some thought that we had other higher priorities in town. I think that covers it.
Thanks, John. Do you want to continue with the recommendations, or?
I think we've.
Still more
Is there
slides.
anything, any other slides after this, Andrew, that we can do, or? Yeah, so.
This is just a brief summary of the overnight parking that the select board's reviewed. There's no real recommendation here. We just included it because we know it's been a topic of discussion. So Lincoln Street pilot program was initiated this February. Future updates and can be expected, and PTTF and the select board will look for more opportunities. And then I saw recently that the parking ban has been lifted for now, but plowable snow would put the ban back into effect whether later this year or forward. So that was that, and then that was everything. So thank you all. Thank you, Park.
Thanks, Andrew.
So I think, Julie, do we have any actionable items that we should ask the select board to vote on tonight? Is that something we're prepared
I would defer to them and to be.
Yeah, I think before we do that, we're still in a public hearing, so I think what we want to do is allow any feedback. So I see Mr. Brown has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Parking garages are wonderful unless you do not maintain. The city of Medford had one, I don't think it lasted 20 years because they did not maintain it. L.Y. Brook Parkway, MBTA, they did not maintain it. I don't think it lasted 20 years. And as we all know, and it will come, when the budgets get tight, first thing that gets cut is maintenance. We suffered through that 20 years ago, and we are still paying the price for it. So consider that. Both lots were swamps. They were swamps. So you're gonna have to drive some deep pilings to get anything on those lots. I know that personally because I watched both of them being built. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other questions or comments in the room? Chris?
Thanks, Mark. And to Bill's point, yes, we don't want Imagination Station to be the next parking garage scenario where it wasn't maintained and now it's gone. But it's more of if the policies and procedures that we put in place with the kiosk and everything work, then we're not going to need a parking garage. If they don't work, what's the next step? There isn't one, because we've already vetted this, I mean, anything beyond kiosk and all of this, I mentioned numerous times, we can't shuffle around spots, we have to create them. And with downtown being developed the way that it is, we're just losing and losing and losing. So if what we're implementing now does not work, that's why we'd be ahead of the game by already having a consultant look into see if it's feasible. Because to John's point, I'm not allowed to mention anything behind my office on Haven Street. So using the CVS lot as an example, we might find out that you can't take the corner coming down that ramp or whatever with a parking garage with a fire truck. Therefore, there will never be a parking garage there unless you went underground. And then, then the price just skyrockets from there. But I think something has to be done. We have to look into it now, because in the future, if it doesn't work, that's gonna be the plan B. And to not move ahead now and be a year or two behind and having the 2030 park committee have to deal with this is just gonna be ridiculous. So I think we bite the bullet now, look into it and find out that CVS cannot have a parking garage, and then we move on. And then you don't ever hear from me or somebody else ever mentioning it again, because it's not possible. We spend money on so many different things, and this, using CVS as an example, we'd be able to have more people coming to the downtown than are already not coming because of the impression that there's no parking. Now that we have parking, we're gonna get, inundated with more people coming downtown. It's just, if we had a parking structure behind CVS or whatever, just think of the things we could do for Town Day, future farmers market, et cetera. Where are these people gonna park? I mean, it's something to look forward to as an investment in the future, if it is feasible. That's all it is right now, is just seeing if it's feasible. If it is not, then it is not. But someone's gotta do it, because it's just been talked about and talked about and talked about, and nothing is ever done. So hopefully that ends this time. And with that,
Other board member comments, questions? Looking to you, Jackie.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm not up on the details of the locations that have been discussed or considered for a garage, or for a consultant to look at the specifics of a garage. Is it limited to that CVS lot 1, or have there been other locations in the core?
I'm
For
only at
consideration.
liberty to talk about CVS, so anybody
I
else can
think
answer.
that there've been many other potential locations that were talked about, including, maybe working with the MBTA along the train tracks, or, further down. So there are a lot of spaces downtown that could be possibilities. So that's all we kind of left it at. I think that the real issue here is that, the town wants a lot of tax revenues for a lot, and they want a lot of development to fund that tax revenue. And that's part of the 40R district rationale. Problem is that what we heard, and what we heard the police department loud and clear telling us, is that all that's great. The question is, how greedy does the town want to get from extra tax revenues? Because it all falls back onto the police department when, I think that Postmark developed they had like 1.8 or so spaces per living unit. And what we heard loud and clear from those residents is that was not enough. But all the new developments are coming in at requirement of a 1 1/4, which is probably, people will argue about that all day long. But what we do here is that when people kind of settle into their lives, that's not enough. So the more development we have with fewer parking spaces per residential development, the worse the problem is going to get downtown. And I think that's where the parking structures ideas have come from. But people will violently disagree that that's a true statement. But we've heard that feedback loud and clear from the residents who have happened to already move in there.
Got 2 comments in the back. I think I saw.
I'll let Liz.
Was this first? Okay.
Sorry, Bernie, I'm gonna be the first person to violently disagree. So this has been a topic of much discussion in the park. We did have a lot of people come in who complained about their private parking concerns, which of course are not the purview of the park committee. So we spent way too much time on something that we have no power over. However, most of the people who were complaining were people who purchased property without buying enough parking spaces for their own cars. There are many residents in Postmark and other developments who are just fine. They come into my store all the time. One of them is my employee, so it is not a universal problem. There's also a misperception that these developments downtown are creating additional parking on the streets. Whereas when early on, when the park started meeting in August, September, we had people saying, oh God, when those buildings are occupied, it's gonna be a nightmare downtown. Unbeknownst to them, those buildings already were occupied and people didn't even notice. So this is a perception thing. But the purview of the CPDC is the purview of the CPDC and not ours. So the private parking issues within developments has nothing to do with the park.
Yes. I just want to mention that the reason why a lot of people live in downtown, including myself, is the fact that it has access to transit, is the fact that I can walk to Market Basket, I can walk to anywhere in downtown, I can walk there. When we think about keeping the center as nice as possible, car storage is probably one of the lowest utility things you can do with it. And I would also say that a lot of us folks go into Boston and to places where it's even harder to park because we want to go there. So most people, when a large portion of people, when they move into a place, either they have the private parking in the building, or they've chosen to live a car light lifestyle. Like myself, I barely drive on the weekdays, usually on the weekends, and that's it. So that's all I would just say about the parking garage, is that I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend finding ways to get people to want to drive less.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room first? Chris.
I just have a quick follow-up to Liz's point. Deputy Chief Amendola did come in though and mention that there was, I believe, 18 cars were parked overnight with the new developments downtown. So there is cars that are leaking into the off-street parking from the units that are down there. So that's what we said in the beginning was happening, and then we got the feedback from the police that showed that that is indeed actually happening. And I don't know what it is now, but I would think it would be actually worse than how it's currently been.
Any other comments in the room? Caitlin, anything on Zoom? Anyone that would like to
Yes,
make a comment? Please.
Yes, first we have Naomi Kaufman.
Naomi?
Hi, thank you, and thanks again to the park committee members for all the work that you've done with this thorough analysis. I wanted to make a couple of points and just raise some questions about making sure that anything that goes forward in terms of parking structure analysis, that the select board and any future committees think about this from a demand-driven perspective, not from a feasibility, where could we possibly put a parking garage perspective. We want it to be demand-driven, and to that point, to clarify, I think it was John who said that none of the prior studies did any analysis on demand. I would encourage you to go back and look at those studies, because in fact, consultant money was spent to do thorough analysis on traffic, parking demand, peak times, off times, and it's, that data could use to be updated, but to ignore the fact that for many years, every time this subject comes up and committees have been formed, analysis has been done in terms of parking counts and have not supported demand requirements for a parking structure. People have come up from many of these public meetings and argued about whether 25 cents or 50 cents or $1 is too much to park in one of our potentially kiosk parking lots. How will we fund a parking garage? Will people pay for that? And it doesn't matter until there's demand for the parking garage. in terms of the question about whether some of the new buildings, the new residential buildings are causing pressure on the downtown, we'd like to all think that that's a positive thing, because that means that there's more people downtown to take advantage of the businesses that are there. But I also want to support Liz Whitlam's point around the fact that this is a CPDC issue. We recently went through rezoning regulations for the CPDC. If the buildings that are being proposed are not providing enough private parking for those residents, the CPDC should be looking at that issue in a very serious way. We shouldn't have to build a parking garage to help back end what those private buildings are not providing for the downtown. So please think about that as well. And then I do think that, you know, it's as the other analyses that have done and led up and the conclusions are here, and it seems like we're poised to make and take some really terrific action that will help utilize the downtown spaces. I look forward to having some of those things move forward and allow the downtown to continue to be as vibrant as possible.
Next up, we have Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Brucolacchio here, a park member. I'm over at Old South tonight. I guess I want to really say I'm so impressed with all the other committee members and everything that they've been presenting. I just had a couple of thoughts, but I guess I need to say these are my personal thoughts. So I own a house in the downtown area on Green Street. So I just want to say that something to remember is that with all this development going on, we are dealing with the twin concerns of we have more cars coming in, we have more visitors coming downtown, and we also have more pedestrian activity. So both of those need to be beefed up in order for our new downtown to be successful. And there's been a lot of good ideas that we brought up, and also we've received many letters from people, and even tonight there's been some other some great ideas there. As far as the parking garage, I'm one of the people that feels like if the future vision for Reading, I don't see how we can take on any more development and not have a parking garage, particularly if the bylaws are not amended appropriately to have enough parking for the residents and their visitors, and also for the businesses that are on their first floor. I just don't see how we would be able to thrive without a parking garage. And a really good example of a community that's done that is up in Newburyport. And so it took them a long time, but they turned it into sort of a transportation hub where buses go there, electric car charging stations. Anyway, I think that would be a great example of something for Reading to strive for in the future. I also wanted to bring up there were several people who had said that we need more handicap spots, and that the Mass Department of Transportation said Reading has something like 1,100 handicap placards just in Reading. These are our own residents that need these spots. So I think we need to really have the PTTF address that. And then last of all, I just want to say I hope that we can work with RCTV and create an educational video so that whatever the select board decides to go forward with, that we can have a video that will explain all of the different nuances and the different, if we do kiosks, how they work, and we could put it on the town's website for people to watch. And that's it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yep.
Caitlin, who's next?
That's it.
Anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Last one on Zoom. Anyone else? Last chance? No one? All right. Could we have a motion regarding closing the public hearing?
So the recommendation is to continue the public hearing, continue it until May 3rd at 7:40 p.m. And the voting will is 28 pages of motions because the the parking regulations have to be amended by street. So we'll kick that off. There's a public hearing already scheduled for May 3rd for a liquor license, right? That's scheduled and posted. But as long as we announce at this meeting the continuance of this public hearing to a set time, we don't need to post it again.
Okay, and the issue being that with 28 pages, we'd be here for a very long time.
We'd be here
Okay,
until.
so let's do that. So for the time certain, is there a time that's already posted for that public hearing?
Yes, so the hearing of the liquor license is at 7:30 p.m. So I would recommend to continue to 7:40 p.m.
You have a motion to that effect?
Pen decided to work. Thank you. You can take your book.
Is it for established, Mr. Chair, may I just ask about the liquor license, is it for an established business or a new business?
It is for an established business, so it's for Suka, who bought Fusion, and they're calling it half and half, and it's a breakfast.
Stop us there, so not on tonight's
It's
agenda.
not,
So, and the only reason I ask is because I'm wondering if 10 minutes is enough time for that, so giving us the name, it's an existing restaurant that has an existing license but wants to expand their business, is 10 minutes enough, or?
We got 15.
Okay,
So
okay,
the question is, do we need
Okay.
more than that?
I wanna ask you, Mr. Chair.
I think we're okay. We can open the hearing after the posted time. We
Okay.
can't do it before
Okay,
the
very
posted time.
Alright, thank you.
So I think 7:45, unless other folks have an objection. So could you make the motion, please?
I move to continue the hearing until 7:45 p.m. on May 3rd.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? We'll take a vote. We're actually all here, so I don't think we need to do roll call. We can just raise hands. So all in favor of continuing till 7:45 on May 3rd, please raise your hand. Opposed? So we pass 5-0. Thanks, folks, for coming out. Thanks, Park, for your presentation. Liz?
I think we need to vote to extend our sunsetting date so that we can continue
That's
to
part of-
exist.
That's coming up next on our agenda.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So
we
if
can't
you,
leave.
if you are gonna leave, you should adjourn first.
No, we don't wanna adjourn because we need to.
You wanna
we need
stay?
to do it at
Okay,
the same
no
time
worries.
as you do it.
I'm not pushing you out. Okay, so let's go back to our agenda.
Yep.
Let's get back to that. And, okay, so that we have 3 items on a consent agenda. The first is to vote to extend the sunset for Park to honor before July 31st, 2022. Just a quick question, Caitlin, do you have motions prepared that you can send to the secretary, or does the secretary already have? You already have them. Thank you. So would you mind reading, let's read the motion, then we can have discussion, see what happens.
So we could move to approve the consent agenda as presented, or we can move to extend the sunset date of Park to July 31st, 2022, move to remove the board member Susan Churchill from the Trails Committee, and move to approve the process for BCCS to request funds from the Select Board Reserve Fund as presented.
Can I suggest we take them one at a time, particularly because we have a new member? And I'd rather kind of go through each one so we see what's going on. Is that acceptable to all? So let's take the first one, to Park, so to extend till July 31st. I think we've had the discussion, I think the hope was that July 31st would be more than enough. I think the request was less, but July 31st would be great. Any questions or comments on that one? All right, so I think the motion actually was made, but wasn't seconded. I'll second it. Any other discussion? None appearing. So this is a vote to extend the sunset for Park to honor before July 31st. All those in favor? Opposed? We are 5-0. Park, you're extended. You should adjourn your meeting if you can.
You have to stay as our
You
quorum.
have a meeting in session.
You have to adjourn.
So are you folks going to adjourn
You
or
vote to accept your extension.
Oh, okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
No, that was here when we came in, Bernie. That's been there for.
Alright, so I move that the park accepts the extension.
All in favor?
Sure, why not?
Any abstentions?
I hate to say this, but you actually have to do it by roll call because you have members online.
Yes, indeed.
They're no longer.
Oh, they're no longer online?
I don't see them.
No.
Catch Julie.
Okay, good job. We're making sure we got our
I was
quorum.
trying to make sure a quorum didn't.
We have six.
We have seven.
Crystal.
And Chris. Okay, so you're extended, so if you don't have other business, you could adjourn?
So, do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Thank you, folks. Thank you very much for a great job putting this together.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, back to our agenda. The second one is Trails Committee member. Has everyone heard the background, seen the background? Okay, so no further discussion. Could you just make the motion again, please?
Yep, move to remove board member Susan Churchill from the Trails Committee.
Is there- Next, Carlo, any discussion? Not appearing, all those in favor? We are 5-0. And last but not least,
Move to approve the process for BCCS to request funds from the Select Board Reserve Fund as presented.
Second.
so this was Fidel's commentary on, and it came from the previous town manager in terms of an idea to have a select board reserve fund voted in and BCC boards, committees, commissions, thank you, would request by July,
By July, correct.
and then it would come to us in terms of allocating funds to any of those groups.
Correct.
So any discussion, questions on that? Karen?
Yeah, I'm glad you pulled this out of the consent agenda because it on the surface, it looked like it was very straightforward. And I see we have a couple of Trails and Historical Commission members here, and I believe the chair of the Trails Committee is on Zoom. So it came to my attention today that this was presented that the select board would be getting a new budget item to accommodate requests that come from any board or committees, but what I was made aware of today is that some boards and commissions have lost their budget. They no longer have a budget. So, so it can't really be an open cattle call for all kinds of new projects. I don't know if any one of the committee members wanna speak to this. So,
Just come on up if you don't mind, Mr. Barnes.
Please just announce your name to the
Sure.
to the machine, to the owl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Ms. Eric. My name's Jonathan Barnes. I'm a member of the Historical Commission, and I'm also a town meeting member. And I was going through the warrant for town meeting when I discovered, as I've been a member, I have looked every year to ensure that our budget of $1,500 for the Historical Commission continues to be there for town meeting to approve. And I was shocked to see that it was not listed on the budget, but I did note in some of the comments that there is this new process. The Historical Commission has had a budget that has been appropriately voted by the legislative body, which is the appropriating body. The Historical Commission receives the $1,500 budget. We do not know in July what that's going to be spent on. It is such a small amount that obviously if there are any issues or items that we would want to fund, that would not like for example, the utility box, art boxes, that would not support that or even reproducing some historical maps or documents. It would simply not be an adequate budget, but it does fund the yearly or fiscal year items that come up, small amounts, whether it's a reproduction or a copying of something or generating some material for some of the garden club meetings or community events that we participate in. It does support that. As a town meeting member, I should first say that I was not aware of this before going through town meeting warrant. And I am, aside and apart from my comments as a historical commission member, and I'm not speaking for the commission because I haven't had an opportunity to discuss it with them, but I am deeply concerned and disappointed, equally deeply, that to my knowledge, there has been no discussion about the commission's budget and the consequences to the commission's budget before seeing it in a town meeting warrant article. I'm also disappointed as a town meeting member to be going through the budget and not seeing an item that I believe is an appropriate appropriation for the annual town meeting, for vetting through the annual town meeting, rather than, if you'll forgive the expression, a discretionary item that appears before select board in July. So for all of those reasons, I can't say that I formulated an adequate opinion about it because I haven't heard any justification for it, having had no information about it before. So I can't say that I formed an adequate opinion about it. But my initial opinion is that I don't support the elimination of our budget. I don't support putting the historical commission. I can't speak for any of the other commissions. Putting them through a process where they have to submit a budget for which they would have an inadequate amount of information to include in that budget. And I don't support having to submit that to a discretionary fund of any other board other than the appropriating authority in town, which is town meeting. So my initial opinion is that I don't support it, and I'm contemplating whether or not it would be appropriate to move at town meeting that the budget, I haven't discussed it with our commission members, whether the budget ought to be transferred back to town meeting so the town meeting can discuss this. Those are all preliminary comments, but those are all my thoughts in the course of the last day that I've had a chance to consider it. Thank you.
Sure. So, Fidel, can I ask a question? Do we know, I had the impression that this came up because there were some additional requests made by a few boards asking for funding. I didn't appreciate or know if funding had been removed from the budget in favor of this. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so there are 3 boards and commissions that have budgets at the moment, right? And those budgets are kept in different places, but the Historical Commission is one of them. The Town Forest Committee is another one, and the Trails Committee is a third, right? So if you recall, as I was stepping into the role in January, essentially Bob presented a lot of requests from the different groups, right? And the total of the request was more money that he can find in our existing budget. So his solution was essentially to pool, if you will, right, the existing budget and also increase it. So in theory, I mean, it is an opportunity to fund a few of those larger requests, right? So if you total the amount, right? I mean, we went from offering to boards $4,500 in total to now having the option to fund $15,000, right? So in theory, we're making funds available to boards. There's also some boards that don't have any budget at all, and the Conservation Commission is one that just kept coming up, right? To Bob and to the select board as having needs and not having a budget, right? So it's just so I completely appreciate it and definitely I apologize for not notifying you ahead of time. I think what we're trying to do here, is lead the process in the best way possible, right? I mean, and it's going to be something that might be modified, right? I mean, I would have no problem with me presenting a budget to select board in July that keeps a very very general appropriation, right, of $1,500 to the Historic Commission, Town Forest, the same $1,500, and Trail Committee, the same $1,500. And if we get any requests halfway through the year, right, or requests from boards that haven't had a budget before, then we entertain those, right? I mean, and maybe that's the way to do it, to you know, keep our existing boards kind of unchanged. But I know that I've heard from a few of the boards even that they need more money, and Historical Commission is one of them. And the requests were not large. It was $1,000 here, you know, $700 there. So and actually, in theory, the boards could come back with the requests that were submitted in January, right? And just say, you know, here's our needs, you know, allocated. So I guess in summary, you know, we're offering boards and commissions 3 times as much, right, as we were in previous years, with a net neutral budget, right? And we are allowing boards that didn't have any funds, right, to get access to the funds. And Conservation Commission is one of them that has come back a few times.
Other thoughts? Please, Chris.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Fidel, for that. I guess the way that I would look at this is if we did have the 4,500 going out total to these boards before, and now we're at 15,000, that's 10,500 more than what we had before possible. So I guess the easy way to just approve this the way that it is just that, you know, I wouldn't be voting on anything more than, or I wouldn't allow $1,500 less to go out to all these 3 boards. It just seems as if we can put the money aside, and if they never use it, then we can give it to somebody else. But I would just, without, you know, having it as an unwritten rule, just pledge to you the $1,500. And I wouldn't vote on anything, and perhaps we can all agree to that would deplete the budget, that would remove the $1,500 from you. You know what I mean? So everyone still can win. You'll still have the $1,500 and maybe 4,000 or 6,000. Who knows what it ends up being? But for those 3 boards to lose it, I agree that is the absolute wrong way to do it. But if in the long run it benefits everybody and we don't change your $1,500, I don't see an issue with it, because you'll have the possibility to get more. So for me, I'll just pledge to keep the $1,500 to those 3 boards as it is, and I won't vote yes on anything that would deplete those options from those boards in perpetuity.
Carlo, any?
Yeah, I apologize for not knowing those were removed from the budget, and I agree. I don't think any board or committee that's had a budget for a number of years, that they should come before us and ask for the same exact amount. That should kind of be grandfathered in, as to what Chris was saying. So I'm all in favor of crafting language that the current boards and committees that have an established budget for X number of years or whatever, that they get that as a minimum. And to keep that going in good faith. And then, again, we have 10,500 for them and other boards and committees to establish a budget. And maybe 3 years from now is an unusual request for 10,000 or for 5,000, and we'll have it. Because right now it's all, you know, fighting a town meeting for it. So I'm okay with crafting language to that effect.
Jackie?
A question about the memo, Fidel, in our
Yes.
packet, page 46 in the packet. These are guidelines for 5 committees listed: Conservation, Trails, Town Forest, Historic District, and Historical Commission.
Yes.
How does that 5 compare to the 3 or 4? And then I guess is that, you know, there's obviously a number of committees and commissions not in that list. So, I mean, when and if those committees and commissions ask for a budget, is that approved by us, town meeting?
Yeah, so I guess to dive into details, the boards and commissions that we heard from in January, right, in the budget process, were those five, right? I mean, so the Trails Committee have a budget right now, right, of $1,500. Town Forest has $1,500, and the Historical Commission has $1,500, right? So we heard from Conservation Commission that they don't have a budget and want things done, and then the Historical District is the same. So I guess what I'm explaining is I'm proposing that these commissions present, you know, a request, right? I mean, and then they are vetted by me, and then I present it to select board for a vote, right? I mean, but very easily there in this memo, I can say that the Historical Commission, Trails Committee, and Town Forest will always get the the budget that has been provided from FY22 and before. I mean, that's an easy fix, at least.
Appreciate that, thank you. Because, so the normal budget process, when I was on the Historical Commission many years ago, would be, you know, it's the budgeting process. So the question comes out from staff to those commissions or committees, is your budget appropriate? Do you have any unexpected, do you have too much? So I would sort of kind of assume that they went through the budget process last fall and gave feedback. So I guess the point is, I would hate to, I think this is a great plan, it sounds like we're all in agreement. I would hate to have the committees and commissions that already have budgets, that already went through this budget process, to have to really jump through any more hoops. And it sounds like we'll have more funds left for some other opportunities that weren't previously funded. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Just one comment and then I'll call on you. Well, I think that what we should also be clear on is, if I take this to a bigger level, it's an idea of zero-based budgeting versus kind of fixed budgets in place. And, you know, zero-based budgeting is a helpful tool, I agree. I think that it would be great for the committees that have budgets or whatever, if they have established things they're already doing with those funds, great. If they believe that they're gonna need more, it may be that they need to look at things and say, okay, do we still need to do X and do Y also, or is it a situation where we might be able to share? And that'll make our $10,000 or whatever the number is go a lot further. And the reason this came up, I think, last year is that we did get a number of kind of new proposals that came in, folks asking for extra funds that we didn't have above and beyond. And that's when I think we had this discussion of, can they fit in the budget that goes to town meeting, or would it be good for the select board to deal with them in their modest dollar amounts? So, you know, I don't think we wanna be playing with $500 here and there, that's not gonna help. But I think that's at least for this year anyway, to start with, let's calm things down, let's allow things to move forward. We know that there are some new requests. It would be great for this July to have those requests, to see what they are in the process that you outlined in terms of evaluating them. I think that makes sense too. So I think I'm seeing heads nodding so far, just to make sure.
Yep, yeah, I think.
Great, please. Oh, actually, can I ask Will to speak? Sorry, I didn't call on him.
Yeah, Will Finch on the Trails Committee. I'd like to thank Jonathan Barnes for his good comments. He's always very clear about analyzing the situation. My first reaction was, does the select board really want to micromanage budget requests, you know, from the different committees? I'd also echo Jonathan's comment that at the beginning of the year, we don't know what's gonna be a priority, what damage is done that we need to repair. Very often our priorities change halfway through the year. When we get a community group that says, we really gotta get this project done, you know, it's a great one, and we have a bunch of volunteers to help out with it. And so we can respond to their needs and requests. But hearing the discussion, it sounds like you're committed to, you know, maintaining the funds to the different committees, and again, if we do have a big issue that comes out halfway through the year, we may be able to come back and ask for a few more funds to get that done. So, all right, thanks for your attention to this.
Jonathan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, first of all, thank you for your time on this issue, and I appreciate, and well, I don't think apologies are necessary. I appreciate it, and I will apologize as well for not having been myself aware of this sooner. But I also want to say, I think that there may be some miscommunication or misunderstanding as I'm hearing this. The Historical Commission, this $1,500 that we have in our budget, it funds stamps or envelopes or a 3-ring binder, and it's certainly been more than adequate in the 8 years that I've been on the Historical Commission, and to my knowledge, because I've been involved with the Historical Commission before that for forever. To the extent other issues come up, like the utility box artwork was a good example. We went out and got grants to fund that. I don't anticipate that that's going to happen. With respect to Mr. Maltese, I think there's some confusion about the requests that came up earlier, and I can't speak to any other boards or committees or commissions, but I can definitely speak to the Historical Commission. We were asked to consider this year, and it might have been in January, I don't really know, but or in the fall, but we were asked to consider whether we had any requests to utilize ARPA funds, because we were made aware that the town had a certain amount of, a significant amount, or depending on your point of view, insignificant funds. And the request had come in to the chair of the Historical Commission to consider whether or not we wanted to request any of that funding. As a result of that process, we came up with 3 or 4, I believe, items. None of them, they might have been the $750 or $1,000. They were not significant. But it was in that process that we came up with those funds. It was, and by the way, my anticipation is that we intend to continue, as I understand the process, which I also didn't understand before reading through town meeting, that there is through the town meeting warrant, that there's a committee set up to come up with recommendations for that, and it's an ongoing public process. And I believe that we will continue to pursue those items through that process. But it was not in any other way a request to increase our annual operating, if you will, budget. So I just want to be clear about that. We were happy with the $1,500 to fund the ongoing monthly expenses that we had, and we weren't looking to fund anything else. Those we were looking for through the ARPA funds. Thank you.
Thanks. So just to clarify on that also, so if there are groups that have projects like that that they would like considered by the ARPA committee, they should get it to the ARPA committee very quickly, because some consideration is being paid now to how to use some of the funds. So it would be great to move that forward as a separate group. In addition, this process started out in the budget process of last year when people were looking for additional funds. I know conservation was and a few others. So that's how it started. We just wanted to make sure that we understand the process. I think what you've laid out, Fidel, makes sense. I think what we talked about makes sense. I think based on that, we should vote on this proposal and to take it forward and then move on. Good with everybody? Okay, should I make? I don't remember when the motion was last made, maybe we should do it again.
Move to approve the process for BCCES to request funds from the Select Board Reserve Fund as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All set, let's take a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? 0, 5-0, we pass. Thank you. Options on water and sewer rates,
Okay.
please.
Let's see if this is the quick part of the meeting. Caitlin, could you pull up the presentation? Thank you. I know you're doing that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Caitlin. I think I said it when the mic was off.
Thank you.
Could we take a mile break?
All right.
Good spot.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
All right. So these pie charts, I think you've seen before, is essentially the breakout of our water enterprise budget. The main thing that I wanted to highlight in this one is just that the majority of our expenses related to our water enterprise budget are essentially fixed, right? So it's debt and our annual assessment from the MWRA. Next slide, Kate. Same thing for the sewer, except on our sewer side, the MWRA assessment is a lot larger. Thanks, Caitlin. Next one. So on the sewer rate, what we are proposing, our sewer enterprise has pretty healthy reserves. Last time I looked was around $4 million, which is very much higher than what is recommended by FinCom. We are proposing to use $350,000 of our reserves and essentially keep our FY23 increase to 1.1% in the water rate.
Sorry, the sewer rate.
Sewer rate. It'll be nice on the water rate. So this is for sewer rate. 1.1% on the sewer rate. Next slide, Caleb. So on the water rate, it is not the same situation. So water rate, as you all saw 2 weekends ago, right? We had a water main break. Anytime that an emergency like that happens, it just continually drains our budget. No pun intended. So what we are proposing is essentially three options. So the first option was presented by Bob in January, I believe, and essentially it says to use $750,000 worth of reserves, and that would essentially result in a FY23 increase of 12.4% in the water rate, and thus a combined increase of 7.1% in the water and sewer rate. Option two is I think what I've been trying to socialize a little bit, and it is essentially to use ARPA funds in order to cushion the blow on the water rate, and essentially option two and option three are the only difference is that in option two, I am proposing that we use $550,000 in ARPA to lower the rates, and in option three, I'm proposing that we use $1 million in ARPA to lower cushion the blow. So $550,000 is essentially what is budgeted in FY23 for capital, right? So capital inside of the operating budget, not bonded, is $550,000. So when FinCom talks about spending reserves, spending ARPA or reserves for one-time things, in my eyes, capital projects is that. It is definitely that. So with option two, it would result in a combined increase. In a water rate increase of 4.6%, combined increase of 2.9, and then in option three, a decrease actually of negative 1.7, and bringing us to a 0% increase combined. Okay, next slide, Caleb. So then, if we follow those two proposals, right? So in the sewer rate would have, the water rate would have a 4.6% increase. That's with option two, and then the sewer rate would have a 1.1% increase, thus having a combined rate increase of 2.9. And in the chart below, I think it's something that I really want to start showing, and essentially, I mean, if we follow that increase, it would result in roughly $75 per year in the average household cost. All right. So, Caleb, could you go back up to a sewer rate? So, two more actually. One more, please. So, on this slide, right, so we could have another lever, right, so in sewer, as I said, we have very healthy reserves, right, it's almost $5 million. We could add an additional $100,000, so instead of $350,000, we do $450,000 from reserves, and that will essentially have a 0% increase in sewer. Right, so sewer is kept at 0, and water is kept with option 2, and that has a combined rate increase of 2.2%. I feel like 2.2%, while the cost is high, undoubtedly, an increase of 2.2%, given the inflation, given everything that's going on in water and sewer, seems manageable to in my opinion.
Kyle?
What's our water fund reserves currently?
So the water fund reserve is sorry, just give me 1 second.
It's in the twos.
It's in the twos.
Vastly
It's in the twos.
High twos or low twos?
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Looking it up. So our reserves in the water fund right now are $3.2 million.
We just had the break.
Correct. So if we take $750,000 and we go with option 2, right? That will leave us essentially 2.5.
But it doesn't take into account the water main break we just had.
It does take into account.
It does.
It does. Well, I mean,
Well.
The one 2 weeks ago, no, it does not.
That's what I meant.
Walker's
The big one, yes, the big one.
big one
All right.
does,
And
yeah.
then we all got an email and about the
tomorrow.
Stoneham
For
for
Stoneham.
tomorrow. So hopefully that goes well.
Yeah.
Initially, I'm all in favor of putting $100,000 more to that easily. And option 2 is a no-brainer, and we can talk about option 3. It's a lot more. But yeah, I would love us to add where this reserve is a lot healthier and water isn't. And is there any way, on a side note, that we can buy with upfront money, our assessment? We have to go back to MWRA because we just joined at the wrong time. You know, Bob has reiterated that a number of times over the years, and we just got hosed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the timing is everything, but there's gotta be a way where we can either buy that down or go back to them and say, hey, we got,
Yeah.
the wrong end of the stick, and can you help us out here? Doesn't hurt to ask, but
Yeah.
seeing that pie chart, that's just horrible to look at.
It's pretty hard. Agreed. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, the option 2 thing, we lose 550 out of ARPA, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward, not looking forward, but looking forward to FY '24. It's gonna be a bloodbath
Right.
based off this. It's like, this can't be sustained. Because we're not gonna have magical ARPA money next time. We're gonna have to use and pull from somewhere else. Otherwise, we'd be looking at 7% or even more at that point. I don't think we're in a good position at all, no matter what we do. So I guess if we can get away with the 550 on the ARPA now, knowing that we're still gonna be screwed next year.
So
Other than
if you
your
don't mind.
future chart that you're gonna show us here, which hopefully would help alleviate some of the.
But if you don't mind, the message that I've been hammering home to ARPA is essentially to allocate at least $2 million to this, right? So initially I went in and I said, $1 million in FY23, $1 million in FY24, right? And that will keep the increase at 0 for both years, right? And I heard, it's a big number. It's we're potentially walking ourselves into a cliff, and those kind of things. So I will still go back to ARPA, right, and say that doing $2 million is still wise, right? So essentially what we're proposing here is in FY23, right? We do 550, and in and we save a portion of that $2 million for FY24. So right, to buffer some some of those. Eventually, it depends on a lot of things, or unknowns, but eventually it might be a cliff that will hit. But at 550, 500 a year, hopefully it's something that won't hit us as hard.
So I guess real quick, based off the future pie chart thing that's coming up after this slide and whatnot, I think it would be good to see the numbers. I guess I'll just speak then. I'll hold off until your next section.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Just piggyback on things Carlo and Chris have said. So could you talk a little bit about the timing? We have a very healthy free cash budget, very, very healthy. So in my mind, ARPA is not the only source of keeping water rates manageable, but I think you mentioned there's some timing considerations, at least for this year.
Yeah.
But how about let's talk about for next
Sure.
year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should set the rates in May. I'll say. I mean, we could probably get away in June, but it is good practice to do it in May. So what based on our conversations, what I would like to do is modify based on the feedback, right, and come back to the board on May 17th in a public hearing format and essentially have a vote at that point on the rate. So FY23 is essentially out the door at that point. But for FY24, we always have the ability to transfer from free cash into the enterprise. That's always an option, right? But in the financial forums, right, that we have in the fall, we can go to FinCom and say that that we would like to request having some free cash, come into the enterprise fund, and those conversations will probably take some time, right? I mean, and I'm sure they'll have some opinions on it, but certainly something we can do.
Just to clarify one thing if I could, so when we say the enterprise fund, we're talking about the operating budget, not the reserves.
Correct.
It has to be actually, the money has to be used.
Correct.
We can't buffer reserves with ARPA money.
Right.
That's not an option, and I don't think we could even do that with free cash, right?
So Sharon looked, and free cash is more flexible.
Oh, it is?
Free
Okay.
cash is more flexible. Free cash can come in, but from the enterprise fund, you can't take out. You cannot take out, you can put in.
Deposits
As
on.
much as you want. Exactly.
That's right. Did
The
you have another
one-way
comment,
street.
Karen?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so Chris, so your point is accurate, like, this is a 1 year that we have this ARPA fund budget. If the ARPA never happened, we'd be looking at free cash, that would be at either reserves or free cash, so it's a great question.
Yeah, or a big bump in rates.
Yeah, I don't wanna look at
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I don't think,
that's a no, not
neither
a
does town meeting, frankly. After 20 years, I'm pretty sure town meeting's not gonna wanna hear about like really expensive water rates. So if we give them an option to make those go away.
Yeah, cool. Jackie?
Sorry. I know the RAC's work is ongoing, but was there an estimate from the RAC that you're currently operating under for the amount in that kind of water and sewer bucket? Has this,
yeah.
and I guess the point of that is, and the underlying concept I'm trying to get at is what has been the RAC's reaction to your suggestion for addressing the FY24?
My opinion is that they wanna give it all to the water and sewer. I don't know if you heard that.
Wow.
I don't know if you heard that.
First ever, look, he's not even been on the job for 90 days,
And
he's
the dog
already
and the
feeding
dog
us.
Don't forget the dog.
So I heard that.
I gotta see.
I don't know what you heard. I don't know what you heard.
She's done.
I heard all water and sewer.
Fast.
All water and sewer. No, so the, I'm sorry. I had to, yeah. So I think people are coalescing to the fact that water and sewer is important. I think that people are also cognizant that it cannot all go to
Right.
water and sewer. I feel like the $2 million number hasn't been too controversial, in my opinion, anyways. And we're cognizant that on the May 12th meeting, there's possibly 2 or 3 items that are urgent needs, and this would definitely fall on that. So the the schools have potentially one urgent request, one time sensitive request, I guess, not urgent. And this would be the other time sensitive request. So on the ARPA May 12th meeting, I will be going to requesting, depending on what the board says tonight, to vote on pre-funding, if you will, option 2.
Pre-funding option 2, not approving the 2 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
We're allowed at any time to spend ARPA funds.
Right.
The board. So that's what he means by that.
All set?
Yes.
Okay, let me chime in also. I think that what you've laid out, getting the extra $100,000 out of the sewer reserves so we can lower that increase, using the 550 in option 2 now to kind of moderate the rate increase that we're talking about makes great sense. I'm uncomfortable with option 3. It's just too much. The ARPA funds need to be pandemic relief, and I just want to be really careful that we don't kind of get a 1 year feel good only to have an unbelievable problem the next.
Sure.
So I think that, from my perspective, I think we're coalescing around that. I think everybody more or less said that makes good sense here.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is water affects everybody in Reading. So at least you might not see the benefit per se, but at least you're benefiting from it equally, so.
I mean, it's Mark, so when I first joined the board, and maybe even the other year that I ran, my recollection of both water and sewer fund was over 5 million.
Yep.
And here it is several years later, because of age and things happen that, my concern going forward, I was gonna propose, to Chris's point, 24 and 25, we're always gonna be having this issue. I was gonna propose option 2 and flipping those two numbers as a one-time offset, have the 750 be ARPA and the 550 be reserves, just to give another cushion and leave more in reserves. I was just gonna throw that out there, that I would be okay with that if anyone else wanted to support that. Again, it's a one-time thing, but definitely okay with the 100 grand, 350 to 450. Definitely okay with option 2, but I would like to see how everyone else feels about flipping those two numbers. And still that be incorporated as part of the 2 million, not increasing another 250, because we're gonna spend 750, but keep that within the 2 million, but instead of spending 550, spend 750.
So are you saying 750 and then Fidel is gonna request 1.25 million and to be the total of the 2 million?
Correct, right, I don't wanna change the 2 million. I'm not looking to do that, his request. I am looking to mitigate future problems by flipping those two green numbers in option 2. Just a thought.
And just to clarify, you said we have flexibility to move free cash into reserves. Did I hear that correctly?
We have free cash into the operating budget.
But not
Not
into
to
reserves.
reserves,
Okay,
not
I want
to
to be clear.
reserves.
Okay, thanks.
So let's clarify that further. So conceivably, we could use 500,000 out of reserves, 550 from ARPA, and then request the town meeting roll $250,000 of free cash into the enterprise fund.
I think for FY 23, I think it's a little too late.
For 23, okay,
For
so maybe for 24.
I would say sure, absolutely, yeah.
I would like to explore something like that for 24.
24, yeah.
Things continue on this path.
If I could just add, I mean, Mr. Bachi's idea is a great one, right? Because you're kind of buying yourself a little buffer, right, for the future.
Yeah, if you remember, a year ago, we had this exact discussion. Remember, we went through it and said, oh, we have 5 million, we got plenty. And it's like, oh, you don't know, it's all pipes. And sure enough,
Listen,
they get bitten.
and that's why I know we have a healthy cash reserve, but and we're probably gonna use it to help mitigate this in future years, and then it won't be as healthy as it once was. So I we're all here, we're all taxpayers, we're all paying water and sewer here, and the residents aren't gonna be happy with us if you know, a small increase will be tolerable. I think option 3, people would love, so would I. And then, as Chris said, you know, there's some slides coming up on what Wakefield's doing, which seems interesting. I don't know how long that would take to implement, and I guess we'd let Wakefield do it first and see how that goes. But yeah, I'm all for mitigating with these one-time funds, future pain, let's call it, because that's what it's gonna be. We're in MWRA, we can't get out. You know, I would love to see us buy our way down on that giant amount, but we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, I'm just throwing that out there to the board as another option.
Was that?
I just had a clarifying, how did we get 5 million in the water reserves to begin with? We just never had issues and it just grew and grew?
I mean,
Never say never.
yeah,
Like how did we accumulate all this money and now obviously the way that I look at it, it's gonna be gone in 3 years.
yeah,
So how do we change course?
so reserves are like free cash, right? I mean, like you budget a set amount, either you spend less because in 1 year things were good, or you make more, right? So I know that when we were looking at flows, for example, it was really interesting to see that in with the pandemic, people were using a lot more water, right? I mean, so if you're selling more water and your budget is unchanged, right, your profit is more, if you will, right? So I think it's a combination of, you know, of probably really tight belts for a lot of years, you know, and also
It just
I can just add to it, it had been sitting in that $5 million range for a fair amount of time.
Yeah.
And we sometimes would see, you know, how much went back in each year, and that's what we'd use to help buffer the rates the next year.
Right.
And it kind of sat somewhere around 5, you know, a little above, a little below, right around 5 for a long time. And the discussion always was, is that too much or is that about right? And Bob felt that it was plenty, and it was, until Walkersbrook. So that's why it's now low again. Might it wiggle up slightly again? Yeah, and that's how we've been using it to buffer future rates. But it's low, at 2.5.
Yeah, that's concerning.
Because I see after we start fixing and doing all this stuff, one would assume that it would just start going up, but based off how we're offsetting these rates, you're never gonna catch back up to yourself. I don't see how we ever would.
It never say never, but yeah, we can always hope, but that will take a long time to get back up to.
And when do we finish our payments to the MWRA?
2027. So in 2027, we'll be paying $500,000 less per year.
Per year, yeah, so that'll make a
So
big difference.
As long as our costs
That's-
are, you know, are in line.
It's 4 years after this one's done.
Water rates will be like $18 a cubic
No.
foot or whatever by then.
We're not gonna let that happen. Any other feedback or any comments on Carlo's question also?
So I guess if you're okay, I mean, I'll go to ARPA and I'll request $750 and we'll go from there.
I think we should vote on that. I kind of was going to, we were talking about your number 2 proposal. I was in agreement with you. I wasn't necessarily thinking that we should go for the $750.
Yeah. So there are a couple of possibilities. One is that we do as you've laid out, option 2 now, request this $550 of ARPA, which is a piece of a larger request, which is gonna involve other things. And then there's probably a discussion for FY '24, about the use of some free cash rather than ARPA. I think part of the sensitivity is, what do we wanna do with the ARPA money? And the more that wiggles out here, the less other stuff we can do. And as priority, we understand, one of the reasons in the formation of the ARPA committee that we wanted to have a broader discussion was to realize that the town has other funds to use too, not just ARPA funds. And where should some of these things come from? And to be careful with the ARPA funds. There are other things people I think would really value from one-time expenditures. And this is bizarre because it's a one-time expenditure, but it's not. I mean, it's it goes away and it's gone, but it comes and bites us afterward. It bites us the next year because we won't have it.
But this affects everybody, whereas some
Yes.
projects will not, and that's the that's the difference.
Yeah.
We're the stewards of this, and I agree with you. But this impacts everybody in town, businesses and residents, so that's the main difference of what we allocate ARPA to. And I wanna see some projects get done, or something gets beautified, or, programming for the seniors gets implemented, and whatever it is, but this affects everybody. And just like our taxes, that affects everybody. So I just wanna be mindful of that. And, maybe someone will propose, let's split the difference, Carlo, let's do $650. And meet in the middle. I'm open to that, but I think we just have to do the right thing is when we're given the opportunity, let's try to do the right thing where it benefits the whole town, and we can do it. Because next year, it's gonna look a lot different, and the following year, until we get to 2027, where we save $500,000, we have a very old town with a lot of old pipes. What's it gonna look like?
Can I ask, Fidel, can you talk a drop about some of the other infrastructure requests that you're talking about with the ARPA committee? In other words, when you say $2 million, why? What is that all about?
So the $2 million were essentially what town meeting had discussed for the water tank, right? So that was kind of my starting point. In the list that I proposed, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's other towns that are spending all their money on water. So
Is it Wilmington?
Wilmington, Tewksbury, North Reading for sure. So this is definitely a path that other people are taking. So it was more like more or less a ceiling, right? I mean, for what I'm hearing, I mean, and I presented to the ARPA committee, and it was essentially, athletics, recreation, water, sewer, and schools, right? I mean, were in my opinion, our top priority.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, did you say town priorities first? I didn't hear.
Yes.
Just making sure. Yeah, so it's a sausage. Squeeze one side, it comes out, squeeze the other side, it comes out the other way. So if we spend more here, it means less on potentially particular infrastructure projects that we would do that would also impact the entire town. So, yeah, so I mean, where do people feel? I was comfortably thinking about 550, could it be slightly more? Sure, I think that makes sense too. How do other people feel about that?
I like option 2. We have a lot of significant items left in our agenda.
But I've gotta ignore the agenda. We're dealing with this issue first.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would support Carlo's proposal, to switch those numbers.
It puts me in a precarious situation where I'd like to know how much money ARPA was gonna be spending before I made this decision to take, $200,000 more out of it, when I know that, the money was already spent before we walked in the room anyway to begin with ARPA. So it's hard to see what we're gonna cut from ARPA to fund this difference, because $200,000 is obviously something different. But it comes back, for me, it's the $750 benefits everybody. I mean, we're never gonna get something that's gonna benefit everybody, like, you're not gonna see it, it's unfortunate. In your pocketbook, maybe you will. It's just, for me, I would be fine with the $750 because it benefits everyone, you're not gonna see it. Other items will benefit so-and-so here and there, but at least this is something for everybody. It's not pretty, it's water.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to go 750 only because there are so many things. I think we can make an argument that we can replace all the capital with ARPA funds, all the capital that we're proposing to do. And we could, and it'll impact most of the residents of the town. But I don't think that's what the ARPA is really, not all of the ARPA can go that way. I just wanna be careful of it also. So we're trying to figure out where's the balance, where's the number that makes sense. And Carlo, your point is spot on, that the reserves are low in water. Lower than I think anyone would like them to be.
Yeah, that makes me nervous, honestly, going forward.
So why don't we do $650 like he said, split the difference kind of scenario?
I'm fine with that.
I'm
How's
good
that
with
feel?
650 then.
Yeah, can we vote?
Yeah, so let's make sure we're really voting. I think we're taking a vote to get the board's feeling
Yeah, what are we doing?
on what to
today?
ask
Because
of
we're not
ARPA.
voting on the
This
rates
is
yet.
getting
You're right,
late.
we're not voting on the rates yet.
I'm sure it's a,
I don't think it's a vote.
I don't think it's a vote.
No,
I think that's.
Strongly encourage you to
Yes.
down.
So we haven't
I
even finished
received
with the
your-
presentation either, so,
But
the
so,
tiered rates.
so on the sewer rate, I'm hearing from the board that we would like to increase the use of reserves to $450,000.
Yep.
And on the water,
Yep.
on the water rate, I'm hearing from the board that we would like to change option 2, basically remove option 1 and option 3. We're gonna throw those out and
Yep.
coalesce around option 2 with having $650,000 from reserves and $650,000 from ARPA. And that's what I will be presenting to ARPA on May 12th.
and then it comes back to us anyway.
After
For
vote
the
of
side.
May 17th.
I think that's, I'm happy with that, thank you.
Excellent.
Great.
And then the last slide, if you don't mind,
Oh,
Caitlin.
sorry, forgot about Wakefield.
Yes, we're
Sorry,
talking about
Wakefield.
We've got a nice lake. So Wakefield conducted the study in 2019, and they implemented this in 2021. So they've had it in place now for a couple of years. And essentially, it's I think I mentioned that there are 6 communities left in the MWRA network out of 61 that have a single rate, right? And Reading is one of them. The other ones are Revere, Stoneham, Winthrop, us, and one more that I forget. But essentially, what it does, the costs are not going to change, right? The costs are fixed. It's essentially how you are distributing the costs among the ratepayers. So what we would do is we would hire a consultant to essentially do a deep analysis into like how many people would fall into each category. And the goal, as any enterprise, is to do a balanced budget, right? So we charge for our expense. So what Wakefield did is they created 4 tiers based on usage, and tier 1 it starts with 1 cubic feet, goes to 1,000. Tier 2 goes tier 1 captures people living alone, senior couples, and other small users. Tier 2 captures the average residential user, and tier 3 allows commercial accounts and larger residential users to conserve to avoid limit 4. And limit 4 is obviously very, very large users. And the increase, what this does allow you to do is that in the future we could target increases to different tiers, right? So not saying that this is a good or a bad thing. It's just something that some towns and cities do, where essentially you could keep the increase on tier 1 flat, right, on a particular year, and we could go to increase tier 4, higher, or tier 3 or tier 3. So this allows us more flexibility in the future when we're doing rate increases every year.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
sorry, itching.
So you said you'll do an analysis, you're proposing to do an analysis to see kind of who would fit into these categories. So that we could see, for example, a family with 2 or 3 kids, I'm sure they're not in tier 2. I'd like to think they're not in tier 4 either.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we can see what the impact would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chelsea is like this. I mean, and it's me and well, my wife and a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a dog. But we are rarely, if ever, above a tier 1, right? I mean, and like taxes, it's like your first 1,000 is billed at this rate, and then your next is billed at another rate. It's not your entire water usage.
Got it.
Sounds good.
Good.
I really like this idea. I'm just wondering if everyone becomes tier 1, how do we get around it?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But it does give some tax breaks to, seniors, obviously, if they're not using as much water as families. I mean, and it gives you the leeway to reduce things or increase them based off the numbers. It just adds another layer on our previous slides and all that we'd have more flexibility to play with it. you know what I mean? So as long as the study isn't like $500,000 or something, like,
The consultant, you
is it $500,000 for now? What are we talking?
We're having ARPA pay for it, so
Oh,
so it's
perfect.
okay.
Yeah,
It's another thing.
easy peasy.
No, the consultant is the same consultant that Wakefield did. It's a 2-year engagement and it's $25,000. I think it's very reasonable and we included it in our FY22 request to town meeting, so it's in the warrant.
Well,
Just
25
add-
grand's reasonable.
To add to your point, it also rewards conservation, so
Yeah.
I take the point about I'll get the tier one, but we've been fortunate to be very good about conservation as a community, and as the way these rates work, strangely, that hasn't helped us as much as we'd like.
It's gonna be a lot of yellow lawns.
So it goes.
This may be wishful thinking, but is there a possibility of some sort of benefit from either MWRA or the state for implementing this kind of process? Like, does MWRA offer any incentives? Like a
So the no.
No.
The answer is no.
All right, let's roll on to,
Request a 5-minute break, please.
yes, please. So we will take a recess for 5 minutes, come back at 10:12-ish. Call back to order. All right, we are moving on to the how to designate the ARPA fund? Sorry, I typed my password in wrong, so I'm making it up as I go. Okay, it's electing to use the loss of revenue election for ARPA funds. Sharon.
Thank you, Mark. Just wanted to congratulate you on your re-election and congratulate Jackie on her election to the select board. It's nice to see you all. I'll be brief. I don't know if you want me to share the pages that I put in your packet, but it really is focused on making a decision about whether or not we want to use that standard allowance for revenue loss, because we have to make that election April 30th, by April 30th. It's a one-time election. It doesn't change anything, but we have to do it with that first filing. The first filing is due April 30th. We haven't spent very much money, just those COVID tests, which I'll include on there. But I do need to tell them we plan to use that standard allocation, which, you know, opens the door to a lot more flexible uses. And in talking to the auditors, they felt that it would be important to have the select board as the authority that's spending the money to chime in on this and make sure that we're all in agreement that I should make that election or not make that election. If we choose not to, I could calculate the revenue loss every year if we decide to go that route after. But this is the easy route. And so if we chose to do revenue loss, it seems to make sense to do it at the beginning of the, you know, the spending. And I could do everything through revenue loss. So it doesn't close any doors for us. It's really more about being on the same page and making sure that I did ask some questions because I had heard from others that we had to flow the whole grant through the general fund and it would close to free cash. And I spoke to the auditors today and they said that, you know, the Treasury is telling people that they can do that, but we don't have to do that. And I wouldn't want to necessarily do it. For me, the more comfortable route is to set up the grant just like we normally do. The money is sitting there and we spend it. I allocate it right out of the grant. So once you guys tell me what you'd like to use the funds for, I create lines, budgets for those things, and we spend it right from there. If it's going to a capital project that's already existing, I would transfer from the grant to the fund. So everything would be tracked a lot more efficiently, I feel, treating this grant just like any other grant. But it is an option that the federal government is allowing for people to let it flow to their free cash. They still need to report on it every year and show where they spent it. But I think that that's much too confusing. I like to have it sitting in the one spot with everything that we spent it on, just sitting in that one grant, and there's no question what we used it for. So it's up to you guys what you'd like to do there. I mean, there's more expansion that I provided in the packet about what the final rule does, and it pretty much elaborated on a lot of sections. But the biggest change was adding the standard allowance for revenue loss. So you don't have to do the very involved calculation that they put out there. And then you still have all that flexibility to use these funds for different purposes. And so I didn't know if you guys had thought about that, if that's something that you're ready to. Obviously, we have to do this by April 30th, so I'm hoping you guys would be willing to make some sort of decision this evening. Or if you have questions about it.
Sharon, do you see any downside of making this election?
Well, the downside was when I heard people say that we had to put it through the general fund because we spent nothing. And so we have a lot of free cash and then you throw another $7.5 million there and then now town meeting has to vote to use the free cash. That's a downside to me. That puts barriers there that I don't want there. I feel like we're doing a lot of work on the RAC committee to identify the potential uses, and then when they come before the select board, I don't want there to be any delays in moving things forward. And I think that the best path forward is to make the election and then have me flow things through the grant like any other grant would be, and not bring the whole grant into the general fund and close to free cash. I just think that's not the best way to do it.
Any comments, questions? No? Jackie? Nope. Okay. Would you like to make a motion, please?
Move to adopt the standard revenue loss allowance for the ARPA funds up to the full amount of the grant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Opposed? We are 4-0 now.
Thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Thank
you too, Sharon.
Sorry it got so late.
Not a problem.
Clarify before Fidel starts that Carlo left because of his shoulder. He just didn't randomly leave.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's now
Just
clarified.
so everyone knows. Yes.
Okay, let's go to town manager goals.
Okay. You don't mind, Caitlin? I will go through these very quickly. They are in the packet. And I'll just say, if you can go to slide 3, Caitlin, that I believe that goals should be aspirational, right, and not operational. So basically, it's your mission statement, right? Like what you are proposing, and in some ways, it's good to have goals that are unachievable, right? That they're far-reaching goals. So I am proposing four goals, that I would set forth, and I would come back to select board. So according to my employment contract, within the first 90 days, I have to present goals to the select board, and then I will receive feedback on these goals in 6 months, and then at 12 months it would be a formal evaluation, right? So these 4 goals, they're 4, and in all honesty, I don't see these goals changing every year. These are goals that I think if successful will really be for the betterment of Reading. So the first one is really what I have been focusing on in my first 65 days or so of employment, and it is earning the trust of staff and community, right? So I've been doing that through multiple of things. The second goal is schools, and it is supporting our students, it's supporting our school staff. The third one is economic development in Reading, and the fourth one is it's infrastructure. Next slide, please, Caitlin. So in the next slide, I mean, I just go through details, right? I mean, and again, I feel like these goals won't change. Maybe the specific targets or how these goals are judged could be enhanced. So there's a multitude of ways that I identify, but just to highlight the most important is to build strong relationships with community partners, to enhance communication and transparency through our new website, through the use of social media, to the use of Code Red. To support staff, right? To support staff, be it internal or outside of town hall as well. To continue employee attraction and retention efforts, and to really keep leading by example when it comes to responsiveness and accountability. Next slide, please, Caleb. On schools, right? I mean, there's obviously the big one is the Killam School. That's a big one that is going to come fast. I have been spending a lot of time really working on my relationship with our superintendent, and I feel like that is going in the right direction. That's a critical partnership that I hear and have heard that is really important, both publicly and privately. And the last bullet point, I think, is something that has come up in the past, and it is basically to develop a sustainable and balanced plan to achieve free full-day kindergarten. Next slide, please. So, economic development, I think, is something that is necessary and needed for any business, any community, any entity that wants to survive. We need to grow, and growth could take a few different options, right? And in in this slide, there are a few reasons, a few ways that I see as avenues of growth. Just a few examples is supporting our downtown. So supporting the business improvement district, supporting our small businesses, really focusing on downtown parking. Another one is of course encourage managed growth. So it's once we reach saturation in one area, particularly in the downtown, where else can we grow? Where else is an opportunity? And obviously, one thing that I will certainly take another stab at is the idea of relocating our DPW building into another location. Next slide, please, Caleb. And the last one is infrastructure. So infrastructure is one that is very near and dear to my heart, but it's not only in terms of pipes in the ground, it's also social infrastructure. So obviously our public health department has seen a lot of growth, a lot of initiatives in that respect. We will be transitioning into the police station in the fall, and it's also continuing to push for either state or federal grants, right? In a way that is sustainable. Birch Meadow, I think is something that comes up. Recalc is something obviously that is important to me. Climate and climate initiatives is important to me. And of course, whatever the vision and decision is with regards to ARPA, I will take a major hand in ensuring that the priorities are executed. That is it.
Let's do that. I have one question, and it's just kind of striking me, I think, because in the front of our packet, we've got the background on the town, the community of excellence, and then the preamble, and there is the second to last paragraph, and it's mostly talking about us, but I think it's talking about us all. As the town's elected executive board, we recognize and accept our role as community leaders. We support the values of our democracy, especially the right to free speech and assembly. We welcome vigorous public discourse. And actually, it's the next sentence. We accept our leadership role in support of the operating principles of tolerance, civility, dignity, and respect for all, so as to sustain our town's cultural and religious diversity. And I don't know that that's a goal. I think it's more of a mantra.
Sure.
That maybe we should kind of think about incorporating there also. That's the only thing that struck me. It's sort of there in some of the pieces in terms of reaching out to the community and nonprofit groups and things like that, but maybe this is a slightly stronger version of that. Okay. Sorry, I didn't think of it before, but it's good. So, any comments from the board? I think this is part of Fidel's 90-day process. Make sure we're clear. So at 90 days, you're coming to us with goals. At 90, so 6 months, whatever that is, right? 180 days. Then we have a discussion about accepting the goals, and we're giving you feedback. Is that at the 6-month point? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And not at the 3-month?
That's correct.
Okay, just making sure. And then a full review at 12. So, comments, questions?
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Fidel. So my biggest thing with Bob, and once again, hopefully I can reiterate this for the last time, me being new, not knowing everyone in Reading, et cetera, for the first year and whatnot. The biggest thing that I took away from Bob all the time is his ability to answer questions immediately. Without really having to think about it, he always just seemed to know the right answer. And if he didn't know, 5 seconds later he would. So he'd be challenged at a town meeting on everything, et cetera. He always had the answers. And I've noticed with you so far, either here or at ARPA and whatnot, you've had the answers for things already. When at times when I didn't think that you would be up to speed per se on how I would assume someone would have been that early into things. So I really appreciate you doing your homework, the legwork, and all the effort that you've put in up into this date to really solidify that, you know, you're meant to be here, and we are glad that you are. So I see nothing wrong that you've done this entire time up to this. You're meeting with everybody. I mean, you're spending more time here than with your family, and you know, it's great for us, and hopefully it'll be great for them someday as well. So thank you.
Karen?
My only comment, this is great, I like this, a lot of these items are very actionable, measurable, and that is gonna make our job easier. And I also thought we should also make note of the fact that you have been participating in the Harvard program. What was the name of that program again? I don't know if you wanna just include it in here. I mean, commitment to earning the trust and being fully qualified for this very large job that you're doing.
Definitely. I can do that.
Jackie?
So I'll just add that yesterday, when I texted Fidel to congratulate him on his marathon, he said that it was the hardest thing he did yesterday. But my response to that was thinking about the hard things he does every day in his role here. And I think, again, you know, the specific and measurable metrics that you've laid out here is great.
So are we all comfortable with these goals now? Yes? Great. Here are the goals.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Liaison assignments. It's not, we don't have an old packet.
No, I did not include it in the packet. Caitlin, so what I did, if it's okay with the chair and the board, is Caitlin and I essentially took a stab at what could potentially be liaison assignments, and we'll pull it up. I mean, and essentially it was for the most part where Ms. Landry was.
The ones you want for
Correct. Yes.
everyone see that?
A little bigger would be better even.
A little bigger, please, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the one that is really important and probably the most urgent for us is the Basque, right? That's the one that gets to do a lot of pre-vetting of committee members, and for that one, we're I would recommend Chris and Jackie to be on it. I mean, that's really the one that is important at the moment. Urgent at the moment, I guess I'll say. Not important.
Is it on there? I can't see it.
It's on the first one. Yep.
It's the top one under administrative service.
Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, there it is, select board docs. There it is.
And I will note that I also took account of the assignments on this one, and if you want, we could put it in the packet for next, or just share it. And the count was roughly equal. It was like 10, 12, 12. Mr. Machi had 12, Mr. Haley had 12, Ms. Herrick had 12, Ms. McCarthy had 12, and Mr. Doxer had 10. And I couldn't get it to 11. Just with playing, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And some of them are more temporary than others. So Park, for example, will expire in July.
Exactly.
Most of the others, I think, they're
Is
recalculable.
is one of them.
Recalc will last through certainly year end. And then we'll see. Perhaps it'll go on longer.
Pile grew, the pie grew.
Caitlin, could you scroll down, please?
But I was trying to, I think the last year, people, we had some sort of input, and Carla's not here, so we could just look at this, digest it, and give
Yeah, I
him some
think that's a
input to
good
share
call.
with you? Okay.
I think that's a good call.
Is that
Why don't
what
we-
feedback,
so
Chris?
digest it, publish it, take a look at it, and then let's first thing at our next meeting, early in the agenda, let's do it. What that would mean, however, is that we should try to cover anything between now and then, kind of with our old assignments. And if you don't mind, Jackie, maybe picking up on some of the ones that Ann had
Yes.
as a start, I think that would be great.
I will send it
And
as soon as
if
the meeting
anybody
is
has
over.
comments, we can share. Cool, all right. Select Board Liaison and Town Manager Report. Liaison. You wanna go first, Karen?
Sure, let's see, so, I attended the Conservation Commission. I don't really have anything to report other than to just thank those volunteers because they worked until midnight to get everything done that they needed to get done with all the people going before them. They did get an update on the community gardens, and so that work continues. There's still a large demand for pools, so you know, some of the projects coming before them now are like new pools in the backyard. I attended the school committee, and one thing that I can give you guys a heads up on is that they formed a committee to name the track after Hal Croft. I don't know if they put a committee together, and they're gonna come to the select board and ask somebody to participate in it. And that's it.
Chris?
Nothing to report.
Won't ask Jackie yet. The Council on Aging is actually very active in a couple of things. One is, I think since our last meeting, so the Recalc had the 2 public forums, which worked very well. We had about 65 plus people come to the senior center for the daytime forum, and probably 25 people came to the nighttime forum at the library. And a lot of opinions were shared in terms of how to think about this, what's important, but most importantly, to get people into the process and to feel comfortable sharing. There is going to be a lot more outreach taking place. There is going to be more kind of public meeting activity taking place. There'll be some focus groups that the UMass gerontology team is leading, and there'll be a survey. And the timing of the survey is sounding like right when everyone gets back from vacation, as in summer vacation. So the start of September, I think, is when that's going to take place. There'll be many activities before then, but a very broad community survey is going to go out at that point. The other thing, 2 other things for Council on Aging. One is that they are very interested in kind of talking with the community, trying to reach out to the 60-plus community post-COVID. Now that the center is open, that's great, but they also want to have some more dialogue with them. So I think they're going to be looking to do some mailings to the community to talk about what's going on. They're very interested in Park, and they want to make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on. They'll participate in the survey. I think that is it. And then Recalc is meeting again tomorrow. Tomorrow night is the next activity on that. And we'll hopefully have updates from many of the 23 communities that we've looked at their senior centers, combined centers, community centers. So we'll see what's going on with that. And then that will continue. I know there'll be a presentation that's in the warrant also from Recalc. There was one other thing, but I can't remember what it was. So with that, town manager report, please.
The main thing is town meeting starts on April 25th. So we are ready. We are ready to roll. The town warrant, the report on the warrant has been distributed to anyone. We've done a series of recordings that's on the website, and I'm really excited about those. I'm asking everyone to share those recordings, and it's not that we want to discourage discourse at the town meeting. It's more an opportunity for members to learn, and particularly the zoning aspect, right? So Julie recorded a 15-minute YouTube on everything that is going to be presented on zoning. I watched it twice, just because it's so complicated. So I encourage everyone to visit those pre-recordings. We're excited about town meeting.
Super. Let's go to future agenda items. Do we have future agenda items?
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that you brought up the preamble thing for the Reading Community of Excellence, where it's mentioned that the community's welcoming nature and sense of safety. We accept our leadership role in support of operating principles of tolerance, civility, dignity, and respect to all, so to sustain our town's culture and whatnot. So I'd like the select board to work on, or I would personally work on, a proclamation reaffirming that to be the case, because in light of the recent events, a 91-year-old Korean War veteran should not have to come before school committee and the select board and defend himself from the actions that were taken by 39 members in this community. That is divisive rhetoric that was used that goes against this select board's principles, and I'd like that reaffirmed that is indeed the case. So I'd be happy to work on a proclamation for everybody to see. We can collaborate on something, but I don't want to see what walked into the room ever happen in this town again.
I appreciate the sentiment. I think we want to be a little careful. I think if we look at that paragraph, the next statement also comes out with, however, we also reserve the right to stand against, and I'm not saying those, but it says here, those who would undermine our shared values or threaten welcoming nature and sense of safety. And I think I'm in agreement with you, we need to calm all the discussion, all the divisiveness, all the rhetoric down. We need to figure out how to do that. And I'm gonna encourage us to work together to make that happen. I'm not sure that what you're proposing is gonna accomplish that, to tell you the truth. I'd be a little concerned. But I hear you loud and clear. I think that we're listening to values that other people are sharing also.
I just don't see how a 91-year-old Korean War veteran is over here threatening the safety of Reading, since you brought up safety. I'm not sure how that pertains to that case. I'm looking at more of refreshing this, since this is May 30th, 2017. We take our own stab at what it should be, and I think every board and committee should be following suit with whatever we come up with, other than the library and school committee, which would have to do their own. But for me, I don't want to see what just took place happen again, and it is our job to make sure that that doesn't take place. Who else is it going to be? We can't just unilaterally change our policies where, we exclude email and then say that people can just send letters to.
We're still talking about future agenda items?
Yes,
I think
we
we're
are.
getting a little off topic.
I was just going to mention that we changed our policy on the Reading Select Board Board of Ethics. The same time we took the email out of the packets, and the argument was made that we could just have people send letters to the editor. Well, now we created something that I'm looking to undo, because I don't feel that was, volunteers in this community are the backbone of it, and to throw 100 of them under the bus should not be happening. And if there's something we can do about it, then I would love to work on something that would prevent that from happening.
I wonder if we could start with kind of a review of the Community of Excellence document as an agenda item.
I think I brought that up at the beginning of the meeting, so I would definitely second that motion.
Yeah, so
If
let's
Chris,
put
you'd
that on
like
there.
to, yeah, that's a good suggestion for an agenda item.
Great. Other agenda items. I know that Ann had mentioned May 31st, I think it's at the bottom of our minutes. Just hop to that for 1 second. She had made a suggestion that we recognize Pride Day before, to encourage the board to adopt a Pride resolution at the May 31st meeting. So I would suggest we put that on the May 31st agenda. There was a document, Fidel, that used to be kind of in the packet that laid out, maybe just see, before I say it, let me make sure I didn't miss it. It kind of laid out
Future
key
agendas?
dates, future agendas and key dates when things were gonna be coming up. That's something we could put back in, please, that would be helpful. And I think that at the bottom of that sheet, it had a list of items that we brought up at previous meetings that we wanna talk about at some point. So I think we need to bring that back. And we can work from that as
It
well.
should be on our select board page as well, not the necessarily agenda items, but the whole 6-month calendar, because and it probably still is there. I think Bob made that change. Or I don't even remember at this point.
We'll see if we can find it. I guess I loved having kind of one document to look at.
And when you're looking to figure and schedule your calendar, like you need to go to the select board page versus like going through all your emails.
So we talked about the date for the water rates.
May 17th.
May 17th.
Public hearing 2.
Public hearing 2, thank you. Anything else public in this?
Yeah, last year Victor suggested, our assessors suggested that we have a meeting to discuss tax classification rates in June, like have a pre-meeting to discuss it, so.
Awesome.
I would just like to get that out there before it gets too crazy.
Let's do that. I would like to propose that we have a retreat, a open meeting retreat, but a retreat, where the 5 of us and others in the audience that choose to join us have a chance to talk a little bit about goals and priorities of the board. We don't have any other agenda items. In other words, it's not part of a regular meeting and we're rushing and hurrying to do things, but it's a chance to talk through some things, and maybe it's a good opportunity to talk through that document a little bit too. In the past ones, I think 2 or 3 years ago, that's one of the things we did, is we worked on the document. We asked Jane Wellman to act as a facilitator for the meeting. I think once we got her to get ice cream as well.
On the list.
There are other options for facilitators I've been hearing as well, to do something a little different, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because we have had to do it by Zoom before.
Yeah, it's a chance to
Versus
be
you've
together
done them in
without other
person.
agenda items, right? It's not, we're voting on the topics that are in front of us. So I would suggest we look at May, maybe, and poke around to see if there's a date in May that we could do it. Okay. I think sooner is better. I'd rather do it before summer if we can, but we'll see how quickly we might be able to do it. We've got town meeting to go through first.
This is on a night meeting or?
Didn't you do it on a Saturday before?
We did it, I did it,
For a couple hours?
we've done it on a Saturday, and we were able to get kind of borrow a rec space somewhere to do it.
Sure, we can do that.
We could go to
If that
Matera
works for
Cabin,
people.
wanna go to that Matera Cabin, no one's ever
Not in
used
May.
it. It has heat.
Does
It has
it?
heat,
Ooh.
yes, it has
Okay,
heat.
all right.
When does,
It does have heat.
when does Canopy Lake open?
I think we would have to be in the same car somehow, and I'm not sure that the cars there are big enough to
You
hold.
have to be in the same car?
Yeah, it's a good thing to be all together. It's the same roller
Is
coaster.
it like a
Who's driving?
karaoke
It's
on
a
the
roller
way up?
coaster. It's-
Have you ever been to
No.
Matera Cabin?
Karaoke?
I have not.
Have you ever been to Matera Cabin?
I've driven by it.
Okay, well,
We'll take
it
a
does
peek.
have heat.
It does, it has to be an open meeting, and there has to be the ability for people that would like to come.
Yep.
So we wanna make sure that that's taking place.
But we're not having public comment.
I think the agenda is ours in
Yeah,
terms of what's going
yeah,
on, but
right.
it's a public
Yeah,
meeting.
it is. That's how I understood it.
I
Okay.
tried Fidel.
Can't believe.
Any other comments, any other agenda items we haven't talked about? Okay, so I think we're set for tonight, so I
Minutes.
entertain.
Minutes.
Oh,
Oh yeah, one just
Shoot.
wants it. I think they're great. I don't have any changes. I didn't send her
Yeah,
any
anybody with any
changes.
comments?
I got nothing. Wait,
I didn't receive any either.
No, I thought they were longer than I expected, but very well done.
Okay, a motion please?
move to approve the meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2022 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? So you can, you have choices.
Yeah.
Because there are 4 of us here.
Hmm.
You could abstain, or you're not saying that you were there because you weren't. You're just approving the minutes, or you can abstain, that's your, or I guess you could vote against them conceivably. So all those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, please raise your hand. Opposed and abstain. So we are 3-0-1. Love the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
This is a non-debatable motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Great. Awesome.